The deputy's hand hovered near his holster as Emily Harper froze mid-step, her lunch bag swinging slightly in the October wind. The parking lot of the Silver Ridge Police Department stretched empty behind her, just asphalt, painted lines, and the sudden weight of being watched. "Ma'am, stop right there." She stopped. "Drop the bag. Hands where I can see them." She set the bag down slowly, her movements careful, controlled. Not scared, tactical, like someone who'd done this before under worse circumstances. Deputy Marcus Kellerman didn't know he was staring at a woman who'd spent 18 months in combat zones, who'd stitched soldiers back together under mortar fire, who'd learned to read danger in a heartbeat. He just saw a nurse. Brown skin, cheap scrubs. Probably didn't belong here. What he couldn't see were the scars under her sleeves, the muscle memory in her stillness, the way her breathing stayed even when his voice sharpened. "Turn around, slowly." Behind him, someone's phone camera went live. "Before we go any further, if you want to see how this plays out, stick with me until the end. Drop a comment with the city you're watching from. I want to know how far this story travels." Now let's get into it. Emily had been working the graveyard shift at Mercy General for 3 years. 12-hour nights in the ER, surrounded by blood, chaos, and people at their worst. It was nothing compared to what she'd seen overseas, but it kept her hands busy and her mind quiet. Most days, that was enough. She'd moved to Silver Ridge because it was small, forgettable, and far from the noise. A town where people knew their neighbors, where the diner closed at 8, where nothing much happened except high school football and the occasional fender bender on Route 9. It suited her. She didn't need much. Just work, sleep, and the kind of peace that came from routine. Her apartment was a 10-minute drive from the hospital, a $30 a week studio above a laundromat. The walls were thin, the heat barely worked, but it was hers. She kept it clean, organized, minimal. No photos on the walls, no clutter, just the essentials. This morning, she'd woken at 6 a.m. like always, made coffee, packed a sandwich and an apple in a brown paper bag. She wasn't supposed to be awake. Most night shift nurses slept through the day, but today was different. Today, she was delivering lunch to Chief Raymond Coulter, not because they were close, not because she owed him anything, but because 2 weeks ago, he'd stopped by the ER after a bar fight got messy, and they'd talked, really talked. He'd mentioned he never ate lunch, never took breaks, just kept working until his hands shook. She told him that was a good way to collapse. He'd laughed, said maybe she had a point. "All right, Harper, you make me lunch, I'll eat it." So she did. She didn't think much of it. It was just food, just a gesture. But in Silver Ridge, gestures had a way of meaning more than they should. The police station sat on the east side of town, a low brick building with a flagpole out front and a parking lot that always looked half empty. Emily pulled her car into a visitor spot, grabbed the bag from the passenger seat, and walked toward the main entrance. The air smelled like pine and distant rain. October in Colorado meant cold mornings and colder nights, the kind of weather that made her old injuries ache. She ignored it. She'd learned a long time ago that pain was just noise. She was halfway across the lot when the cruiser pulled up. It came fast, engine loud, tires crunching gravel as it swung into her path. The door opened before the vehicle even stopped, and Deputy Marcus Kellerman stepped out, one hand on his belt, the other resting near his sidearm. Emily stopped walking. "Ma'am," he said, voice sharp. "Can I help you?" She kept her hands visible, the bag dangling from her left. "I'm just dropping off lunch for Chief Coulter." "That right?" His eyes flicked to the bag, then back to her face. "You work here?" "No. I'm a nurse at Mercy General." "Uh-huh." He stepped closer, boots heavy on the pavement. "Mind telling me what's in the bag?" "A sandwich and an apple." "Mind showing me?" Emily didn't move. "Am I being detained?" Kellerman's jaw tightened. "I'm asking you a question, ma'am." And I answered it. His hand shifted closer to his weapon. "I need you to set the bag down and step back." She did, slowly. The bag landed on the asphalt with a soft thud, and she took 2 steps backward, arms loose at her sides. Behind Kellerman, a woman in a sedan slowed down, phone angled toward the scene. Emily didn't look at her. She kept her eyes on the deputy, reading his body language the way she'd been trained to. Tense shoulders, shallow breathing, trying to project control he didn't actually have. "Turn around," he said. "Why?" "Because I'm telling you to." "Do you have probable cause?" His face flushed. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Emily turned around, not because she had to, but because she knew how this worked. "You stayed calm. You followed orders when they didn't cost you anything. You documented everything later." Kellerman moved closer, his voice dropping. "Hands on your head." She complied. "You carrying anything I should know about? Weapons? Drugs?" "No." "You sure about that?" "Yes." He circled her slowly, his boots scraping the ground. Emily kept her breathing steady, her mind clear. She'd been searched before, by soldiers, by insurgents, by people who actually wanted to hurt her. This was theater. "All right," he said finally. "You can put your hands down." She did. "Pick up your bag and get inside, and next time, call ahead." Emily bent down, retrieved the bag, and walked toward the entrance without looking back. Her pulse was calm. Her hands were steady, but her mind was already cataloging everything: time, location, behavior, witnesses. She pushed through the glass doors and headed straight for the front desk, where Officer Tanya Reeves sat behind a partition, typing something into a computer. "Hey, Emily," Tanya said, glancing up. "Chief's in his office. You good?" "Yeah." Tanya frowned. "You don't look good." "I'm fine." She wasn't, but she would be. Chief Coulter's office was at the back of the building, a cramped space with too many filing cabinets and a desk buried under reports. He looked up when Emily knocked, waving her inside. "You actually brought lunch," he said, grinning. "I didn't think you were serious. I don't say things I don't mean." "Fair enough." He took the bag, peered inside, and nodded. "Turkey? Roast beef? Even better." He leaned back in his chair, studying her. "You all right? You look like you just walked through a war zone." Emily almost laughed. "Your deputy stopped me in the parking lot." Coulter's grin vanished. "Which one?" "Kellerman." He set the bag down, jaw tightening. "What happened?" She told him, every detail. No emotion, no embellishment, just the facts. When she finished, Coulter was quiet for a long moment, fingers drumming against the desk. "I'll talk to him," he said finally. "Don't." "Emily, he didn't break any laws. He was just doing his job." She paused. "Badly." Coulter exhaled. "He's got a complaint history. Nothing formal, but I've heard things." "From who?" "Doesn't matter. Point is, I'll handle it." Emily didn't argue. She'd learned a long time ago that promising to handle something wasn't the same as actually doing it. She left the office, walked back through the station, and stepped outside into the cold. The parking lot was empty now. No cruiser, no deputy, just her car and the wind. She got in, started the engine, and sat there for a minute, hands on the wheel. Then she pulled out her phone and opened her notes app. October 14th, 9:47 a.m., Deputy M. Kellerman, parking lot, Silver Ridge, PD. Unlawful stop. No probable cause. Witness present. She saved it. Then she drove home. The video went live that night. Emily didn't know about it until the next morning, when her phone started buzzing with messages from coworkers, friends, people she barely knew. She ignored them all, made coffee, and opened her laptop. The footage was grainy but clear, shot from a distance, probably from a car. It showed Emily standing in the parking lot, bag at her feet, hands visible. Kellerman circling her like she was a suspect in a crime scene. The audio was faint, but you could hear his voice, sharp, commanding, aggressive. The caption read, "Nurse stopped by police for delivering lunch." Silver Ridge PD, it had 12,000 views. By noon, it had 50,000. By evening, it had 200,000. The comments section was a battlefield. Some people defended Kellerman, said he was just being cautious, doing his job. Others called it harassment, profiling, and abuse of power. A few recognized Emily from the hospital, said she was one of the good ones, said this was wrong. Emily read none of it. She closed the laptop, finished her coffee, and got ready for her shift. Work was different that night. People stared. Not openly, just quick glances, whispered conversations that stopped when she walked past. Her supervisor, Dr. Angela Morton, pulled her aside before rounds. "You okay?" Angela asked. "Fine. Emily, the whole hospital's seen that video." "So?" Angela hesitated. "So, are you going to do anything about it?" "Like what?" "I don't know. File a complaint? Talk to a lawyer?" Emily shook her head. "I don't need a lawyer. I didn't do anything wrong." "That's not the point." "Then what is?" Angela didn't have an answer. Emily went back to work. 2 days later, the Silver Ridge Gazette ran a front-page story. Local nurse stopped by police. Community demands answers. The article included the video, witness statements, and a quote from Chief Coulter. "We take all concerns seriously and are reviewing the incident thoroughly." Emily read it once, then threw the paper away. She didn't want attention. She didn't want to be a story. She just wanted to do her job and go home. But Silver Ridge had other plans. By the end of the week, 3 more people had come forward. A teacher, a mechanic, a college student home for the summer. All of them had been stopped by Deputy Kellerman. All of them described the same behavior: aggressive, invasive, unnecessary. One woman said he'd made her empty her purse on the hood of her car. Another said he'd threatened to arrest her for obstruction when she asked why she was being stopped. None of them had filed complaints. "What's the point?" the teacher said in an interview. "They protect their own." Emily watched the interviews from her apartment, arms crossed, mind working. She'd seen this before. Different uniforms, different countries, but the same rot underneath. Power without accountability. Systems designed to protect the wrong people. She opened her laptop and started typing. Not a complaint, not an op-ed, just a timeline. Every incident, every witness, every pattern. If this was going to be a fight, she was going to fight it the way she'd been trained, with precision, with evidence, with patience. The call came on a Tuesday. Emily was in the middle of a trauma case. Motorcyclist, broken ribs, internal bleeding, when her phone buzzed in her pocket. She ignored it. The patient came first. 30 minutes later, the patient was stable, the bleeding controlled, the ribs wrapped. Emily stepped into the hallway, pulled off her gloves, and checked her phone. 3 missed calls, all from the same number. She didn't recognize it. She called back. "Harper?" The voice was male, unfamiliar. "This is Lieutenant Dale Merrick, Colorado State Police. We need to talk." Emily's pulse didn't change. "About what?" "Deputy Kellerman, the incident in the parking lot, and a few other things." "I'm listening." "Not over the phone. Can you come in?" "When?" "Tomorrow, 10 a.m., State Office in Boulder." Emily paused. "Am I under investigation?" "No, but Kellerman is." She closed her eyes, exhaled slowly. "I'll be there." The state office was a glass and steel building 40 minutes north of Silver Ridge. Emily walked in at 9:55 a.m., dressed in jeans and a sweater, no makeup, no pretense. Lieutenant Merrick met her in the lobby, mid-50s, graying hair, the kind of face that had seen too many bad days. He shook her hand, led her upstairs, and sat her down in a conference room with a view of the mountains. "Thanks for coming," he said. "You didn't give me much choice." He smiled faintly. "Fair. Let me cut to it. We've been looking into Deputy Kellerman for the past 6 months. Your incident? It's not the first. It's not even the 10th. Emily leaned forward. "So why is he still working?" "Because until now we didn't have enough. Complaints got filed, sure, but they all got dismissed. Insufficient evidence. No witnesses. Officer discretion." He opened a folder, slid it across the table. "Then your video showed up, and people started talking." Emily flipped through the file. Names, dates, locations, all of it meticulously organized. "Who dismissed the complaints?" she asked. Merrick's jaw tightened. "Sergeant Philip Kellerman, Marcus's uncle." Emily looked up. "He's been burying them." "We think so, but proving it's another story." "What do you need from me?" "Your statement, on record, and anything else you've got. Notes, photos, witnesses?" Emily reached into her bag and pulled out a flash drive. Merrick raised an eyebrow. "What's this?" Everything I documented, times, locations, behavior patterns. I cross-referenced it with the other complaints. There's overlap. He stared at her. You did this yourself? I was trained to collect intel. This is just intel. Merrick took the drive, turned it over in his hand, and smiled, genuinely this time. You might have just saved us 6 months of work. Emily didn't smile back. I want him off the street. We're working on it. Work faster. The investigation moved quietly at first. Merrick's team pulled body cam footage, reviewed dispatch logs, interviewed witnesses. What they found was worse than anyone expected. Marcus Kellerman had logged over 300 traffic stops in the past 18 months. 60% of them were people of color. 40% resulted in searches. 0 resulted in arrests. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the overtime. Every stop, every single one, had been logged during overtime hours, which meant Kellerman was getting paid extra for harassing people who hadn't committed crimes. And his uncle had signed off on every timesheet. When the financial records came to light, the case exploded. Thud. The media descended on Silver Ridge like locusts. National outlets, local news, podcasts, activists. Everyone wanted a piece of the story. Emily stayed silent. She didn't do interviews, didn't make statements, didn't feed the fire. But the fire burned anyway. Protests started outside the police station, small at first, 20, 30 people, then hundreds. Signs, chants, demands for accountability. Chief Coulter held a press conference, his face drawn and tired. We are cooperating fully with the state investigation. Deputy Kellerman has been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome. Someone in the crowd shouted, "What about his uncle?" Coulter hesitated. Sergeant Kellerman has also been placed on leave. The crowd erupted. Emily watched it all from her apartment, arms crossed, face unreadable. She'd seen revolutions before, watched them rise and fall. Knew that anger was easy, but change was hard. Her phone buzzed, a text from Merrick. We're moving forward. Grand jury convenes next week. She typed back, good. Then she put the phone down, grabbed her jacket, and headed to work. Quote, the ER was slammed that night. Car accident on the highway, multiple casualties. Emily moved through the chaos like she always did, calm and focused, her hand steady even when the world around her wasn't. One of the patients was a teenager, 17, unconscious, bleeding from a head wound. Emily worked fast, stopping the bleeding, stabilizing his vitals, keeping him alive until the surgeon arrived. When it was over, the kid's mother grabbed Emily's hand, tears streaming down her face. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you. Emily nodded, pulled her hand back gently, and walked away. She didn't need thanks. She just needed to keep moving. The grand jury handed down indictments 3 weeks later. Deputy Marcus Kellerman, civil rights violations, fraud, falsification of records. Sergeant Philip Kellerman, obstruction of justice, conspiracy, abuse of authority. Both men were arrested at their homes, cuffed, and led away in front of cameras. The footage played on every news channel in the state. Emily didn't watch. She was at work. The trial started in January. Emily was called to testify on the second day. She wore a simple blouse and slacks, no jewelry, no makeup. Walked into the courtroom like she was walking into an operating room, focused, prepared, unshakable. The prosecutor was a woman named Diana Ortiz, sharp and relentless. She asked Emily to describe what happened in the parking lot, and Emily did, calmly, clearly, without emotion. Did you feel threatened? Ortiz asked. No? Why not? Because I've been threatened before. This wasn't that. Then what was it? Emily met her eyes. It was someone using power they didn't earn to control someone who didn't deserve it. The courtroom went silent. The defense tried to rattle her. Kellerman's lawyer, a slick man in an expensive suit, asked if she'd ever been arrested, if she had a grudge against police, if she was looking for attention. Emily answered every question the same way, calm, direct, factual. Ma'am, the lawyer said, isn't it true that you posted about this incident on social media? No. You didn't share the video? I didn't record the video. Someone else did. But you benefited from it, didn't you? All this attention. I didn't ask for attention. I asked for accountability. The lawyer tried again. Isn't it possible my client was just doing his job? Emily's eyes didn't waver. If his job was to harass innocent people, then yes, he was doing it very well. The courtroom erupted in whispers. The verdict came down on a Friday. Guilty. On all counts. Marcus Kellerman, 4 years in federal prison. Philip Kellerman, 6 years, forfeiture of pension. The judge's voice was steady as she read the sentence. These men abused the trust placed in them. They weaponized their authority for personal gain, and they did so without remorse. This court will not tolerate it. The gavel fell. Emily sat in the back row, hands folded in her lap, face calm. It was over. But the fallout wasn't. Silver Ridge rebuilt. New chief, new oversight, mandatory body cam enforcement, citizen review board. Officer Tanya Reeves, the one who testified against her own colleagues, was promoted to sergeant. The victims, every single one, received formal apologies and settlements. And Emily? She went back to work. 1 year later, she pulled into the parking lot of the Silver Ridge Police Department. Same car. Same time of day. Same brown paper bag. She walked toward the entrance, footsteps steady, head high. No one stopped her. She reached the door, paused, and looked back at the empty lot. For a moment, she remembered the weight of that day. The deputy's voice, the cameras, the choice she'd made to stay calm instead of fight back. She'd been a soldier once, trained for war. Now she was a nurse, trained to heal. But some battles she'd learned were fought the same way, with patience, with precision, with the quiet certainty that the truth always leaves a trail. She turned back toward the door, pushed it open, and walked inside. Behind her, the wind picked up, scattering leaves across the pavement, and somewhere in the distance, a phone buzzed with a new message from Merrick. Another case just opened. Interested? Emily didn't answer. Not yet. She had lunch to deliver. Chief Coulter was standing by the coffee machine when she walked in, his back to the door, shoulders tight like he'd been waiting. He turned when he heard her footsteps, and for a second, something like relief crossed his face before he caught himself. "You're still doing this," he said. Emily set the bag on the counter between them. "I said I would." That was before everything blew up. "Nothing's changed." He laughed, short and bitter. "Everything's changed, Harper. You know how many people in this building won't even look at me anymore? Half of them think I'm responsible for what happened. The other half think I should have seen it coming." "Should you have?" Coulter's jaw tightened. He picked up the bag, opened it, stared at the sandwich like it was evidence in a case he didn't want to solve. "I don't know. Maybe. Probably." He looked up at her. "Does it matter?" "Only if you let it happen again." He didn't argue, just nodded slowly, like he was filing that away somewhere he'd have to deal with later. Emily left him there, walked back through the bullpen where officers pretended not to watch her, and stepped outside into the cold. The sky was gray, heavy with the promise of snow. She pulled her jacket tighter and headed toward her car. She was halfway across the lot when she saw the envelope tucked under her windshield wiper, plain white. No markings, no return address. She glanced around. The lot was empty except for a few cruisers and a maintenance truck parked near the back fence. No one watching, no one waiting. She pulled the envelope free, turned it over in her hands. Light. Probably just paper inside. She opened it. A single typed line centered on the page. "You should have stayed quiet." Emily read it twice, folded it back into the envelope, and slid it into her pocket. Then she got in her car, started the engine, and drove home like nothing had happened. Because it hadn't. Not yet. The message from Merrick was still waiting when she got back to her apartment. She dropped her keys on the counter, pulled out her phone, and read it again. Another case just opened. Interested? She didn't know what that meant. Didn't know if it was related to Kellerman or something else entirely. But Merrick didn't reach out unless it mattered. She typed back. "Details?" The reply came fast. Not over text. "Can you meet tonight?" Emily checked the time. She had 6 hours before her shift started. Enough time to drive to Boulder, hear him out, and get back. Where? Same place. 7 p.m. She sent a thumbs up and set the phone down. Then she pulled the envelope from her pocket and read the message again. You should have stayed quiet. Threats didn't scare her. She'd been threatened by people who actually meant it, people with guns and explosives and nothing left to lose. Whoever sent this was trying to rattle her, make her second guess, make her afraid. They didn't know her very well. She tucked the envelope into a drawer with the rest of her documentation. Dates, names, incidents, all of it cataloged and organized like a field report. If this escalated, she'd be ready. She always was. The drive to Boulder was quiet. Highway 36 cutting through open plains, mountains rising in the distance like a wall she could never quite reach. Emily kept the radio off, her mind running through scenarios the way she used to before patrols, mapping exits, cataloging variables, preparing for outcomes she couldn't predict. Merrick was waiting in the same conference room, same folder on the table, same tired look in his eyes. But this time, he wasn't alone. A woman sat across from him, late 30s, dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, sharp eyes that tracked Emily the moment she walked in. She wore a state police jacket, no badge visible, but the posture said law enforcement louder than any ID ever could. Emily Harper, Merrick said, standing. This is Detective Carla Vinson. She's heading up a task force. Emily shook her hand, firm grip, confident. Task force for what? Vinson gestured to the chair across from her. Sit. This might take a minute. Emily sat. Vinson pulled a laptop from her bag, opened it, and turned the screen toward Emily. A map filled the display. Colorado, broken into counties. Dots scattered across the state like stars. Red, yellow, green. Each dot represents a complaint filed against law enforcement in the past 5 years, Vinson said. Red means dismissed. Yellow means under review. Green means resolved. Emily studied the map. There were hundreds of dots, most of them red. Silver Ridge is here. Vinson tapped a cluster near the center. Kellerman's incidents. But look at this. She zoomed out. Same pattern in Ridgefield. Same in Ashford. Same in 3 other counties. Emily leaned forward. Different officers? Different officers, different departments, same result. Vinson pulled up another file. Names, dates, dismissal reasons. Every complaint buried, every investigation stopped cold. And in every case, the officer in question had a family member in a position of authority. Nepotism? Emily said. Systemic nepotism, Merrick corrected. We're talking about a network. Sons, uncles, cousins, all of them protecting each other. It's not just one bad apple. It's the whole damn orchard. Emily's mind went cold and sharp. How long has this been happening? At least a decade, maybe longer. Vinson closed the laptop. We didn't see it until your case, until people started talking. Now, we can't unsee it. Emily sat back, processing. What do you need from me? Vinson glanced at Merrick, then back at Emily. We need someone inside, someone who can move through these towns, talk to people, gather testimony without raising alarms. Someone who knows how to document, how to build a case. You want me to go undercover? Not undercover, just embedded. You're a nurse. You can work in any ER in the state. People trust you. They'll talk to you. Emily's jaw tightened. I'm not a cop. We know. That's why we want you. She looked at Merrick. You signed off on this? He nodded. I wouldn't ask if I didn't think it mattered. Emily was quiet for a long moment. She thought about the envelope under her windshield, the message, the threat, the idea that someone out there wanted her to disappear, to stop making noise, to let the system bury itself again. How many towns? She asked. Vinson reopened the laptop. 6. Maybe 7. We'll start small. Ridgefield, Ashford. Maybe one more. See what you find. And if I find something, you document it. We investigate, same as before. Emily looked at the map again, at all those red dots scattered across the state like wounds that never healed. All right, she said. I'm in. The first town was Ridgefield, a mining town 2 hours south of Silver Ridge, population 8,000, 1 hospital, 1 police department, and a reputation for keeping outsiders at arm's length. Emily transferred to the ER there under the guise of a temporary contract, 6 weeks, covering for a nurse on maternity leave. No one questioned it. No one cared. She was just another body filling a gap in the schedule. The hospital was smaller than Mercy General, older, the kind of place where equipment broke down more often than it got replaced. But the staff was competent, and the work was steady. Emily fell into the rhythm quickly. Night shifts, trauma cases, the occasional overdose or bar fight. She kept her head down, didn't make waves, didn't ask questions she wasn't supposed to ask. But she listened. The nurses talked about their lives, their families, their frustrations, and sometimes when the shift was quiet and the guards were down, they talked about the police. "My cousin got pulled over last month," one nurse said during a break. "Speeding," they said. Except she wasn't. She was doing 40 in a 50 zone. "Did she fight it?" Emily asked. "Tried to, got nowhere. The officer who pulled her over, his dad's the deputy chief." Another nurse chimed in. "Same thing happened to my brother. He filed a complaint, and it just disappeared. Like it never happened." Emily filed it all away. Names, relationships, patterns. After 2 weeks, she had enough to call Vincent. They met in a diner off the highway, halfway between Ridgefield and Boulder. Vincent ordered coffee, Emily ordered water, and they sat in a booth near the back where no one could overhear. 3 officers, Emily said, sliding a handwritten list across the table. All of them related to supervisors, all of them with complaint histories that went nowhere. Vincent scanned the list, nodding slowly. "This matches what we've been seeing. You got witnesses?" 2, maybe 3 if I can get the third one to talk. "Do it, but be careful. If word gets out that you're digging—" "I know." Emily's voice was flat. "I've already got 1 threat. I can handle more." Vincent looked up sharply. "What threat?" Emily told her about the envelope, the message, the timing. Vincent's face hardened. "You should have led with that." "It's nothing." "It's not nothing. It means someone's paying attention." She pulled out her phone, typed something quickly. "I'm putting a flag on your name. If anything happens, anything, you call me, immediately." Emily nodded, but she didn't feel reassured. Flags didn't stop bullets, didn't stop people who'd already decided you were a problem. The third witness was a woman named Rachel Ortiz. She worked as a teacher at Ridgefield High, lived alone in a small house near the edge of town, and had filed 3 separate complaints against Officer Jared Novak, all of them dismissed. Emily found her at a coffee shop on a Sunday morning, sitting by the window with a stack of papers that looked like grading. "Rachel Ortiz?" Emily asked, stopping by her table. The woman looked up, wary. "Yeah?" "My name's Emily Harper. I'm a nurse at the hospital. Can I talk to you for a minute?" Rachel's expression shifted, guarded, suspicious. "About what?" "Officer Novak?" Rachel's face went pale. She glanced around the coffee shop, then back at Emily. "I don't want to talk about that." "I understand, but I think you should." "Why? So I can get ignored again? So I can waste more time filing paperwork that goes nowhere?" Emily sat down across from her, uninvited. "Because this time, it's not going nowhere. This time, people are listening." Rachel stared at her for a long moment, searching her face for something. Truth, maybe, or just the smallest reason to believe. "Who are you really?" "I'm exactly who I said I am, a nurse, but I'm also someone who doesn't let things slide." Rachel laughed bitterly. "You sound like me, 2 years ago." "What changed?" "I got tired of fighting a system that doesn't care." Emily leaned forward. "What if the system's starting to care?" Rachel didn't answer right away. She looked down at her papers, at the coffee going cold in front of her, at the life she'd built in a town that kept punishing her for speaking up. "He pulled me over 6 times, she said quietly. 6. Always late at night. Always when I was alone. Never gave me a ticket, just made me wait. Made me feel small." She looked up, eyes hard. "You know what that does to a person? Knowing the law's supposed to protect you, but all it does is make you afraid." Emily did know. She'd felt it, seen it, lived it. "I need you to go on record," Emily said. I need you to tell your story again. Officially. And then what? Then we build a case, a real one, and we make sure it sticks. Rachel was quiet for a long time. Then she nodded, just once. All right, but if this goes nowhere, I'm done. I can't keep doing this. It won't go nowhere. Emily didn't know if that was true, but she said it anyway, because sometimes people needed to hear certainty even when there wasn't any. By the end of her 6 weeks in Ridgefield, Emily had 5 witnesses, 12 documented incidents, and enough evidence to justify a full investigation. Vincent moved fast. Warrants were issued, officers were questioned, body cam footage was subpoenaed, and just like in Silver Ridge, the system started to crack. Officer Jared Novak was placed on administrative leave. His supervisor, his father, Captain Leon Novak, was reassigned pending review. 2 other officers were flagged for investigation. The town erupted. Protests outside the police station. Town hall meetings that turned into shouting matches. People picking sides, drawing lines, tearing the community apart over questions that should have had simple answers. Emily watched it from a distance, packing up her apartment, preparing to move on to the next town. Ashford. Ashford was different, smaller, quieter. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and outsiders were noticed immediately. Emily's cover story was the same, temporary ER nurse, filling in for staffing shortages. But this time, people asked more questions. Where was she from? Why Ashford? How long was she staying? She kept her answers vague, her presence low-key. Just another transient worker passing through. But the pattern was already there, waiting to be found. 2 weeks in, a paramedic named Lucas Brennan pulled her aside after a shift. "You're the one from Silver Ridge, aren't you?" he said. Emily's pulse didn't change. "Depends on what you mean by the one." "The nurse, the Kellerman case. I saw the news." She didn't deny it. "Yeah, that was me." Lucas looked around, then stepped closer, lowering his voice. "There's something you should know about this place." Emily waited. "Officer Derek Haas. He's bad news. Pulls people over, writes tickets for nothing, threatens them if they don't pay up. And his brother's the mayor. How many people has he done this to?" "Enough that we all know about it, but no one says anything." "Why not?" Lucas's jaw tightened. "Because the last person who filed a complaint lost their job, and the one before that got audited by the IRS. Coincidence, right?" Emily's mind shifted into gear. "You got proof?" "Not the kind that holds up in court, but I know people. People who'd talk if they thought it mattered. It matters." Lucas studied her, weighing something she couldn't see. Then he nodded. "All right, give me a week." But the week turned into 2. Lucas came through with 3 witnesses, all of them scared, all of them willing to talk if Emily promised them protection. She couldn't promise that, but she could promise she'd try. Vincent sent a team to Ashford, undercover investigators posing as insurance adjusters, building inspectors, anything that gave them access without raising alarms. They found what Emily had found, and more. Officer Derek Haas had logged over 400 traffic stops in 3 years. 80% of them resulted in fines. 40% of those fines went unpaid, because the people couldn't afford them, because they didn't understand the system, because they were too afraid to fight back. And every unpaid fine turned into a warrant, which turned into an arrest, which turned into more fines. It was a cycle, a machine, and it ran on fear. When the state moved in, they didn't just arrest Haas, they arrested his brother, the mayor, and the finance director who'd been funneling the fine money into a private account. Ashford imploded. The news coverage was brutal. National outlets picked it up. Activists descended. The town became a symbol of corruption, of systemic abuse, of everything wrong with small-town law enforcement, and Emily became a name people recognized. Not a face, not a voice, just a name attached to the collapse of 2 towns in 3 months. She didn't want the attention, didn't want the credit, but she had it anyway. What? She was packing her car outside the Ashford Hospital when the man approached. Tall, mid-50s, expensive suit, the kind of person who didn't belong in a hospital parking lot at midnight. "Emily Harper?" he said. She didn't turn around, just kept loading boxes into her trunk. Depends who's asking. My name's Vincent Cross. I represent a coalition of officers from Ridgefield, Ashford, and Silver Ridge. He stepped closer. We'd like to talk. Emily closed the trunk, turned to face him. I don't talk to lawyers without my own lawyer present. Cross smiled, cold and professional. I'm not here to threaten you. I'm here to offer you a deal. Not interested. You haven't heard it yet. Don't need to. He pulled a card from his pocket, held it out. When you change your mind, and you will, call me. Emily didn't take the card, just stared at him until he set it on the hood of her car and walked away. She waited until he was gone, then picked up the card and read it. Vincent Cross, Esquire, Criminal Defense and Civil Litigation. She tore it in half and dropped it in the nearest trash can. The next morning, she got a call from Merrick. We've got a problem, he said. Emily pulled over on the side of the highway, engine idling. What kind of problem? Someone leaked your name, not to the press, to the departments. Every town you've worked in now knows who you are and why you're there. Emily's grip tightened on the phone. How bad? Bad enough that I'm pulling you out. You're done with field work. I'm not done. Emily, I said I'm not done. Merrick was quiet for a moment. You've got a target on your back. You understand that, right? These people aren't just dirty cops. They're organized, connected, and now they know your face. Good. Let them know. That's not how this works. Then maybe it should be. She hung up before he could argue. Mods. That night she drove back to Silver Ridge. She didn't know why. Maybe because it was the only place that felt like it had actually changed. Maybe because she needed to see that the fight had been worth something. She parked outside the police station, stared at the building in the dark. The lights were on inside. A few cruisers in the lot. Quiet. Normal. She was about to leave when her phone buzzed. Unknown number, she answered. Yeah? A voice she didn't recognize, male, calm. You've made a lot of enemies, Miss Harper. Emily's pulse stayed steady. Get in line. This isn't a game. I know. That's why I'm winning. The line went dead. Emily sat there for a moment, staring at the phone. Then she saw the headlights in her rearview mirror. 2 vehicles, moving fast, no sirens, no lights, blocking her in. Emily's hand moved to the gear shift, eyes tracking both vehicles in the mirrors. The one behind her was a black SUV, tinted windows, no plates visible from this angle. The one pulling up on her left was a sedan, older model, nondescript, the kind of car that disappeared in traffic. She had maybe 3 seconds before they boxed her completely. Her mind ran the calculations. Reverse wasn't an option. The SUV was too close. Forward meant jumping the curb and crossing the station lawn, and that would bring every cop inside running. Left was blocked. Right was open, but barely. She made the choice. Engine roaring, she cranked the wheel hard right and punched the gas. Her car lurched forward, tires screaming as she clipped the curb and shot across the empty visitor spaces toward the side exit. The sedan tried to cut her off, but she was already moving, already committed. She hit the street doing 40, blew through a stop sign, and didn't slow down until she was 6 blocks away and certain no one was following. Then she pulled into a gas station, killed the engine, and sat there with her hands on the wheel, breathing steady, heart rate barely elevated. She'd been in worse, but this was different. This wasn't war. This was home. And the people hunting her weren't enemies in a distant country. They were supposed to be the ones enforcing the law. Her phone buzzed. Merrick. She answered. I'm fine. What the hell just happened? His voice was sharp, tight. We've got reports of a pursuit near the Silver Ridge PD. Wasn't a pursuit, just people trying to send a message. Did you get a look at them? No plates, no faces. Professional. Merrick swore under his breath. Where are you now? Safe. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. She paused. They knew I'd be there. That's not random. No, it's not. Merrick's tone shifted, colder now. Someone's feeding them information. Maybe from our side, maybe from theirs. Either way, you're compromised. Emily's jaw tightened. So what do you want me to do? Hide? I want you to stay alive long enough for us to finish this. Then finish it faster. She hung up and started the engine. She didn't go back to her apartment, didn't go to the hospital. Instead, she drove north, past the city limits, into the foothills where the roads turned to gravel and the houses spread thin and dark. She knew a place. An old hunting cabin her unit had used for downtime between deployments, back when she was still active. It belonged to a staff sergeant who'd retired to Montana and never sold the property. She'd kept the spare key. The cabin was exactly as she remembered, small, drafty, smelling of pine and old wood smoke. No electricity except a generator out back. No running water except a hand pump in the kitchen. But it had walls, a roof, and 20 miles of wilderness between her and anyone looking. She dropped her bag on the floor, checked the windows, locked the door. Then she pulled out her laptop and got to work. No, the files Vincent had sent her were extensive. Complaint records, financial documents, personnel files, incident reports spanning a decade. Emily opened them one by one, cross-referencing names, looking for connections she'd missed. And she found them. Vincent Cross, the lawyer who'd approached her in Ashford, had represented officers in all 3 towns. Not just Kellerman, not just Novak or Haas. Dozens of them. And every case had ended the same way. Settlements paid quietly. Complaints withdrawn, accusers pressured into silence. But it wasn't just Cross. There were others. A bail bondsman named Gerald Peck, who always showed up when officers got arrested. A retired judge named Raymond Falco, who consulted on personnel matters for multiple departments. A consulting firm called Sentinel Advisory Group that provided training and policy review, and just happened to employ the relatives of half the officers under investigation. It was a network, a machine built to protect itself. Emily pulled up the financial records. Sentinel Advisory had contracts with 8 police departments across Colorado. Total value, $3.2 million over 5 years. She dug deeper. The company was owned by a holding group. The holding group was registered in Delaware. The Delaware company had 3 board members, all of them using addresses that traced back to P.O. boxes and shell corporations. But one name appeared twice. Once as a consultant, once as a silent partner in a real estate LLC that owned properties in Silver Ridge, Ridgefield, and Ashford. Philip Kellerman, Marcus Kellerman's uncle. The sergeant who'd buried complaints and signed off on fraudulent overtime. He wasn't just corrupt, he was the architect. Emily leaned back, staring at the screen. This wasn't just about bad cops. It was about infrastructure, about money, about people who'd built a system designed to extract profit from abuse and call it law enforcement. She grabbed her phone and called Vincent. "I found something," Emily said, "and you're not going to like it. They met the next morning in a diner off Route 7, halfway between the cabin and Boulder. Vincent brought 2 federal agents, one from the FBI's Public Corruption Unit, the other from the IRS Criminal Division. Emily laid it all out. The network, the money, the shell companies, the connections between Sentinel Advisory and the officers under investigation. The IRS agent, a woman named Caroline Grant, took notes the entire time. When Emily finished, Grant looked up, expression grim. "This is RICO territory," she said. "If we can prove coordination, we're not just talking about individual prosecutions. We're talking about dismantling an entire criminal enterprise." Vincent nodded slowly. "How fast can you move?" "Depends on what you give me. If Harper's documentation is solid, we can start pulling subpoenas by end of week." "It's solid," Emily said. Grant looked at her. "You sure? Because if we go after these people and the case falls apart, they walk, and you become the target." "I'm already the target." "Not like this. Right now, they're trying to scare you. If we move forward and fail, they'll do worse." Emily met her eyes. "Then don't fail." The subpoenas went out on a Thursday. Bank records, corporate filings, email accounts, phone records, everything tied to Sentinel Advisory, its subsidiaries, and the individuals connected to it. The response was immediate. Vincent Cross filed motions to quash in 3 separate jurisdictions. Gerald Peck closed his bail bonds office and disappeared. Raymond Falco hired his own lawyer and refused to comment. and Philip Kellerman, currently serving 6 years in federal prison, requested a meeting with prosecutors. Vincent called Emily that night. He wants to talk, says he has information. About what? He won't say, not until he's got a deal on the table. Emily's gut twisted. You think he's serious? I think he's scared, and scared people either shut down or start talking. Which one is he? That's what we're about to find out. The prison was 2 hours south, a low-security facility surrounded by fences and desert scrub. Emily wasn't supposed to be there. Civilians didn't sit in on inmate interviews, but Vincent pulled strings and the warden didn't ask questions. They met in a conference room with cinder block walls and a steel table bolted to the floor. Philip Kellerman sat across from them, wrists cuffed, orange jumpsuit hanging loose on a frame that had lost weight since his arrest. He looked older, tired, like a man who'd spent 6 months realizing exactly how much he'd lost. "Miss Harper," he said when she walked in. "Didn't expect to see you here. Disappointed?" He smiled faintly. "Not really. You're the reason I'm here, after all." "You're the reason you're here," Vincent said, sitting down. "Let's not rewrite history." Kellerman's smile faded. He looked at the federal prosecutor sitting beside Vincent, a man named David Ortega, sharp-eyed and unreadable. "You the one who can make a deal?" "Depends on what you're offering," Ortega said. Kellerman leaned back, chains clinking. "I want my sentence reduced, and I want protection." "From who?" "From the people who built this thing, the ones you're going after." He paused. "You think I'm the top? I'm not. I'm middle management. The real players, they're still out there, and they're not happy." Vincent leaned forward. "Give me names." "Not until I've got something in writing." Ortega pulled a folder from his briefcase, slid a single sheet of paper across the table. "Proffer agreement. You talk, we listen. Anything you say can be used to build a case, but not against you directly, assuming you're telling the truth. Sign it, and we'll see what you've got." Kellerman read the document slowly, lips moving slightly. Then he picked up the pen and signed. "All right," he said. "Where do you want me to start?" "Sentinel Advisory," Vincent said. "Who runs it?" Kellerman laughed, short and bitter. "You already know. You've seen the filings. We've seen shell companies. I want the real names." Kellerman looked at Emily, then back at Vincent. "There are 3 of them. Vincent Cross handles the legal side. Gerald Peck handles enforcement, makes sure people who complain don't complain twice. And the money guy," he hesitated. "His name's Aaron Stratton, former cop, former Fed. Now he's a consultant, and he's the one who keeps the whole thing running." Emily's mind locked on the name. Aaron Stratton. She'd seen it in the files, listed as a consultant for Sentinel, but with no details, no background, nothing that explained who he was or what he did. "Where is he?" Ortega asked. "I don't know. He moves around, uses burner phones, meets in person, never leaves a trail." "How do we find him?" Kellerman smiled grimly. "You don't. He finds you, Tech." The meeting ended an hour later. Kellerman gave them locations, dates, transaction records, enough to start building a case against Cross, Peck, and Stratton. But as they walked back to the car, Vincent's face was tight. "What's wrong?" Emily asked. "Stratton. I've heard that name before." "From where?" 10 years ago, there was a federal task force investigating police corruption in Arizona. Stratton was one of the lead investigators." She paused. Then the case fell apart. Key witnesses recanted. Evidence disappeared. The whole thing collapsed. Emily's blood ran cold. He was dirty. Probably, but no one could prove it. He retired, took his pension, and vanished. And now he's running the same scam in Colorado. Vincent nodded slowly, which means he's been doing this for a long time, and he's very, very good at it. Emily spent the next 3 days at the cabin, combing through files, looking for any mention of Aaron Stratton. She found fragments, consulting invoices, redacted emails, a single photo from a law enforcement conference in 2019. He was in his 60s, gray hair, average build, the kind of face that disappeared in a crowd. But the more she looked, the more she realized how little there was. Stratton had scrubbed himself clean. No social media, no public records beyond the basics, no trail except the money he'd moved and the people he'd protected. On the fourth day, her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Then she did. Ms. Harper. The voice was calm, measured, older. My name is Aaron Stratton. I think we should meet. Emily's grip tightened on the phone. I'm not interested. I think you are. Because right now you're sitting in a cabin 20 miles outside Silver Ridge, trying to piece together a case that's bigger than you realize. And you're running out of time. Her pulse spiked. She glanced at the window, saw nothing but trees and darkness. How did you find me? I've been doing this a long time, Ms. Harper. Longer than you, longer than Vincent, longer than anyone who thinks they can stop me. He paused. But I'm not calling to threaten you. I'm calling to offer you a way out. I don't want a way out. Yes, you do. You just don't know it yet. She stood up, moved away from the window. What do you want? I want you to stop. Walk away. Go back to being a nurse. Forget about Sentinel, forget about the network, forget about all of it. And if I don't, then people will get hurt. Not you, at least not directly, but the people you care about, the people you're trying to protect. They'll become collateral damage, and you'll spend the rest of your life knowing you could have prevented it. Emily's jaw tightened. You're bluffing. Am I? His voice didn't change. Tell me, Ms. Harper, how's Chief Coulter doing? Still eating those lunches you bring him? Still trusting that the world's a little safer because you're in it? Her blood went cold. You have 48 hours, Stratton said. After that, I stopped being polite. The line went dead. Emily didn't call Vincent, didn't call Merrick, didn't call anyone. She grabbed her laptop, her files, and everything she'd documented, stuffed it all into a backpack, and walked out of the cabin. She got in her car, started the engine, and drove straight to Silver Ridge. The police station was quiet when she arrived. Late shift, skeleton crew. She parked in the same spot she'd parked weeks ago, walked through the same doors, and headed straight for Coulter's office. He looked up when she knocked, surprise crossing his face. Harper? What are you doing here? She closed the door behind her. We need to talk. About what? About the fact that you're in danger, and so is everyone else connected to this case. Coulter frowned. What are you talking about? She told him. Everything. Stratton's call. The threat. The network they'd uncovered. When she finished, Coulter sat back, rubbing his face. Jesus! He's not bluffing. He knows where I've been, knows what I'm doing, and if he knows that, he knows about you. Coulter was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood up, walked to the window, stared out at the empty parking lot. What do you want me to do? He asked. Get protection. For yourself. For anyone who's been involved in this. But protection from who? We don't even know where this guy is. Then we find him. Coulter turned to face her. You're not a cop, Harper. You're a nurse. You've done enough. It's not enough. Not until he's done. Before Coulter could respond, the lights went out. The entire building went dark. No emergency lights, no exit signs, nothing. Just blackness and the sudden, oppressive silence of a place that should never be this quiet. Emily's hand went to her pocket, fingers wrapping around her phone. She pulled it out, activated the flashlight. Coulter moved toward the door. Stay here. No. He didn't argue. They stepped into the hallway together, Emily's light cutting through the dark. The bullpen was empty, the front desk abandoned. Where is everyone? Coulter whispered. I don't know. They moved toward the main entrance, footsteps echoing on tile. Emily's mind ran through scenarios. Power outage, equipment failure, deliberate sabotage. They reached the lobby. The front doors were open, and standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the streetlights outside, was a man Emily didn't recognize. Older, gray hair, average build. Aaron Stratton. Ms. Harper, he said, voice calm. I told you, 48 hours. Behind him, 3 other men stepped into view. Not cops, not official, just muscle. Coulter's hand moved toward his sidearm. I wouldn't, Stratton said. You're outgunned, outmaneuvered, and out of time. Emily stepped forward, putting herself between Stratton and Coulter. What do you want? Stratton smiled. I want you to understand something. You think you're fighting corruption. You think you're bringing justice, but all you're doing is breaking things you don't understand. He stepped closer. This system, it works. It keeps people safe. It keeps order, and people like you, people who think they can tear it down because it's not perfect, you're the real danger. You're stealing from people, Emily said. You're destroying lives. I'm maintaining balance. There's a difference. Not to the people you've hurt. Stratton's smile faded. Last chance, Ms. Harper. Walk away, now, or I start making examples. Emily didn't move. Stratton sighed. All right, your choice. He nodded to the men behind him. They raised their weapons, and from somewhere in the darkness behind Emily, a voice cut through the silence, cold, authoritative, unmistakable. Federal agents, drop your weapons now. The lights came back on. The building flooded with armed agents, FBI, state police, tactical units pouring in from every entrance. Stratton's men froze, guns clattering to the floor as they were swarmed and cuffed. Stratton didn't move, just stood there, hands at his sides, face unreadable. Vincent stepped forward, badge out. Aaron Stratton, you're under arrest for racketeering, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and about 20 other charges I'm going to enjoy reading to you. Stratton looked at Emily. This doesn't end here. Yeah, Emily said. It does. The aftermath moved fast. Stratton, Cross, and Peck were all arraigned within 72 hours. The network collapsed. Officers arrested, assets frozen, contracts voided. 8 police departments across Colorado were placed under federal oversight. The media went wild. Congressional hearings were announced. Reform bills were drafted. And Emily Harper, the nurse who'd started it all by delivering a sandwich, became the name everyone knew. She hated it. 2 weeks later, she was back in her apartment in Silver Ridge, packing the last of her things. Vincent stopped by, knocked twice before Emily opened the door. You leaving? Vincent asked. Yeah. Where to? I don't know yet. Somewhere quiet. Vincent nodded. You earned it. Emily didn't respond. Vincent handed her an envelope. This came for you. Federal Witness Protection Office. Emily opened it. A letter. An offer. Full protection, new identity, relocation assistance. She read it once, then set it on the counter. You're not taking it, Vincent said. No. Why not? Emily looked at her. Because I didn't do this to hide. I did it so other people wouldn't have to. Vincent smiled faintly. You know they're going to come after you, the ones we didn't catch, the ones still out there. Let them. Vincent left a few minutes later. Emily finished packing, loaded her car, and stood in the empty apartment one last time. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You should have taken the deal. Below it, a photo. Emily's car. Parked outside her apartment. Taken 30 seconds ago. Emily's eyes went to the window. The blinds were drawn, but she could see the edge of the parking lot through a gap. Her car sat exactly where she'd left it, undisturbed under the streetlight. She grabbed her keys, moved to the door, stopped. Whoever sent that photo wanted her outside, wanted her rattled, wanted her making mistakes. She wasn't going to give them that. Instead, she pulled up her phone's camera app, switched to the front-facing lens, and angled it toward the window. Using the reflection in the screen, she scanned the parking lot without breaking cover. 2 vehicles she didn't recognize. Both running, one near the entrance, one near the exit. Classic box formation. Emily backed away from the window, dialed Vincent. They're outside my apartment, she said when Vincent picked up. 2 vehicles, unknown occupants. How long? Just showed up, sent me a photo. Vincent swore. Don't go outside, I'm sending a unit now. How far out? 10 minutes. That's too long. Emily. She hung up and called 911. The dispatcher answered immediately. 911, what's your emergency? This is Emily Harper. I'm at 1247 Oak Ridge Apartments. There are 2 suspicious vehicles in the parking lot. Occupants unknown. Possible threat. Are you in immediate danger? Not yet. Officers are en route. Stay inside and away from windows. Emily ended the call and moved to the back of the apartment, where a sliding door led to a narrow balcony overlooking an alley. She unlocked it, stepped outside, looked down. 10 feet. Manageable. She grabbed her backpack, slung it over one shoulder, climbed over the railing, and dropped. She hit the pavement hard, knees absorbing the impact, rolled once, came up moving. The alley was dark and empty, lined with dumpsters and storage units. She ran north, away from the parking lot, toward the main street 2 blocks over. Behind her, she heard engines revving. They'd seen her. She hit the street at a full sprint, cutting between 2 buildings and emerging onto a commercial block lined with closed shops and dim streetlights. A bus stop sat 50 yards ahead, a single rider waiting under the shelter. Emily slowed to a walk, breathing controlled, trying not to draw attention. The 2 vehicles from the parking lot turned onto the street behind her. She didn't run. Running made you a target. Instead, she walked to the bus stop, sat down next to the other rider. A kid, maybe 19. Headphones in, oblivious. The vehicles cruised past slowly, windows dark, predatory. Emily kept her head down, watched them in her peripheral vision. They didn't stop, just kept driving, disappearing around the next corner. She waited 5 minutes, then 10. When the bus arrived, she got on, paid cash, and rode it across town to a 24-hour diner near the hospital. The diner was half empty, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the smell of coffee and fried food thick in the air. Emily took a booth near the back, ordered coffee she didn't drink, and pulled out her phone. 3 missed calls from Vincent, 2 from Merrick, 1 voicemail. She played the voicemail. Vincent's voice tight and angry. "Officers checked your apartment. No one there. Where the hell are you?" Emily texted back, "Safe. Don't call again until you've secured the area." The response came immediately. "Where?" Emily didn't answer. Instead, she opened her laptop and logged into the encrypted server Vincent had given her access to. Case files, surveillance footage, transcripts from Stratton's interrogation. She started reading. Stratton hadn't said much after his arrest. Invoked his right to an attorney, refused to cooperate, sat in silence while federal prosecutors laid out the charges. But his lawyer had filed motions, lots of them, motions to suppress evidence, motions to dismiss charges, motions claiming the investigation was politically motivated, that the arrests were unlawful, that his client's rights had been violated. Standard defense playbook. But buried in one of the motions was a detail that made Emily stop. Stratton's attorney had requested a list of all confidential informants involved in the investigation. The motion had been denied, but the request itself was telling. He was fishing, trying to figure out who'd talked, which meant he didn't know, which meant someone on the inside was still feeding him information, but not everything. Emily pulled up the list of people who had access to the investigation files. 37 names, FBI agents, state police, prosecutors, support staff. Too many to narrow down without help. She closed the laptop, drained her coffee, and left $20 on the table. Then she walked outside, hailed a cab, and gave the driver an address she'd memorized weeks ago. The house belonged to Tanya Reeves, the officer from Silver Ridge, who'd testified against her own department. It was a small ranch-style home on the west side of town, set back from the road, surrounded by trees. Emily knocked twice. Reeves answered in sweats and a tank top, gun in hand, eyes sharp. "Harper? We need to talk." Reeves glanced past her, scanning the street. "You alone?" "Yeah." She stepped aside, let Emily in, locked the door behind her. The living room was sparse. Couch, TV, a stack of moving boxes in the corner. Reeves set the gun on the coffee table and crossed her arms. "What's going on?" she asked. Emily told her. The photo, the vehicles, the escape. Reeves listened without interrupting, jaw tight. "You think it's connected to Stratton?" "Has to be. He's in custody, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have people on the outside." "So what do you want from me?" "I want to know who you trust in the department, in the state police. Anyone who's been involved in this case." Reeves hesitated. "That's a short list." "Give it to me anyway." Reeves walked to the kitchen, grabbed a notepad and pen, scribbled 3 names, handed it to Emily. "These are the only people I'd bet my life on," Reeves said. "Everyone else? I don't know, and right now, I don't trust anyone I don't know." Emily looked at the names. 2 state troopers, 1 federal agent. Vinson wasn't on the list. "Why not Vinson?" Emily asked. Reeves met her eyes. "Because Vinson's good at her job. Maybe too good. And people who are too good at their job sometimes cut corners to get results." Emily folded the paper, tucked it into her pocket. "Thanks. Where are you going now?" "Somewhere safe." "There's no such thing, not anymore." Emily didn't disagree. She spent the night in a motel off the interstate, paid cash, registered under a fake name. The room smelled like mildew and stale cigarettes, but it had a lock on the door and a view of the parking lot. She didn't sleep, just sat by the window, laptop open, working through the files again. By sunrise, she'd found something, a discrepancy in the financial records. Sentinel Advisory had made a payment 6 months ago, $50,000, listed as consulting fees, paid to a limited liability company called Northbridge Solutions. She ran the name. Northbridge Solutions didn't exist, no business filings, no tax records, just a shell. But the payment had been processed through a bank in Denver, and banks kept records. Emily pulled up the subpoena log. No one had requested records from that bank, which meant either no one had noticed the payment or someone had deliberately ignored it. She grabbed her phone, called one of the names Reeves had given her, Special Agent Laura Finch, FBI. Finch answered on the second ring. "Who is this?" "Emily Harper. Tanya Reeves gave me your name." A pause. "What do you need?" "I need someone to pull bank records without telling anyone else on the task force." "Why?" "Because I think there's a leak, and I think the leak is feeding information to Stratton's people." Finch was quiet for a moment. "You have proof?" "Not yet, but I will if you help me." "Send me the details. I'll see what I can do." Emily sent the information, then hung up and waited. Eat. The records came through 3 hours later. Northbridge Solutions had received payments from Sentinel Advisory. Every month for the past 2 years. Total, $1.4 million. And the account holder was listed as Marcus Webb. Emily stared at the name. She didn't recognize it. She ran it through every database she had access to. No criminal record, no social media, no public profile. But there was one hit, a property deed in Aurora, Colorado. Marcus Webb owned a house there, purchased 5 years ago for cash. Emily pulled up the address, cross-referenced it with public records. The house was registered to a trust. The trust was managed by a law firm in Denver, and the law firm's senior partner was Vincent Cross. She had him. Emily called Finch back. "I need a warrant for a property in Aurora." "On what grounds?" "Financial fraud. Money laundering. Take your pick." "You got enough for a judge to sign off?" "More than enough." Finch hesitated. "This goes sideways. It's both our asses." "It won't." "How do you know?" "Because I'm not wrong." Finch exhaled. "All right, I'll make it happen. But you stay out of it. Let us handle the entry." Emily agreed, but she had no intention of staying away. The warrant was executed at dawn. Emily watched from a block away as FBI agents surrounded the house in Aurora, weapons drawn, voices sharp and commanding. The door came down in seconds, and the team flooded inside. 10 minutes later, they emerged with a man in cuffs. Not Marcus Webb. Someone else. Someone Emily recognized from the files. Gerald Peck, the bail bondsman, the enforcer. The man who'd made sure complaints disappeared and witnesses stayed silent. He was dragged to a waiting vehicle, face blank, mouth shut. Emily's phone buzzed. "Finch, we got him. And we got something else." "What?" "Documents, ledgers, names, enough to connect Peck to every complaint that got buried in the past 5 years. Emily closed her eyes, felt the weight of it settle. "What about Webb?" "No one here by that name. But we found rental agreements. Looks like Peck was using the property as a safe house." "For who?" We're still sorting through it. But Harper, there's something you need to see. Emily met Finch at the Federal Building in Denver 2 hours later. Finch led her to a secure room, closed the door, and spread a stack of documents across the table. These were in Peck's safe, Finch said. Encrypted files. Took our tech team an hour to crack them. Emily scanned the pages. Financial transfers, shell company transactions, payroll records for officers across 6 states. It's bigger than Colorado, Finch said. This network runs from Arizona to Wyoming, maybe further. Emily's pulse didn't change. How many people are involved? Hundreds, maybe more. Emily looked up. And Stratton? Finch pulled out another document. A contract. Dated 3 years ago. Aaron Stratton's name was at the top. Below it, a list of services, consulting, training, policy review, investigative support. And at the bottom, a signature. Not Stratton's. Someone else's. Emily read the name twice, her blood going cold. Raymond Coulter. Awesome. She didn't call him, didn't confront him, just got in her car and drove back to Silver Ridge. The police station was quiet when she arrived, the parking lot half empty. She walked inside, past the front desk, straight to Coulter's office. He was at his desk, paperwork spread in front of him, coffee going cold. He looked up when she walked in. Harper, what are you... She threw the contract on his desk. Coulter stared at it, face draining of color. You signed off on Sentinel Advisory, Emily said. 3 years ago. Before Kellerman, before any of this went public. Coulter didn't move, didn't speak. Tell me I'm wrong, Emily said. He looked at her, eyes hollow. I can't. Why? Coulter leaned back, rubbed his face. Because they came to me. Said they could help. Said they could reduce complaints, improve community relations, make the department more efficient. And I believed them. You didn't ask questions. I asked questions. They had answers, good answers, professional presentations, references from other departments. It all looked legitimate. When did you realize it wasn't? Coulter was quiet for a long moment. When you got stopped in the parking lot. When I saw the video. When I started hearing the same stories from different people. He paused. By then, it was too late. If I came forward, I'd lose everything. My job, my pension, my reputation. So you stayed quiet. I tried to fix it from the inside, tried to push Kellerman out, tried to cut ties with Sentinel, but they had their hooks in too deep. Emily's jaw tightened. You let people get hurt because you were too scared to admit you made a mistake. I know. That's not good enough. Coulter looked at her, eyes red. What do you want me to do? I want you to testify, on record, against Stratton, against everyone involved. They'll destroy me. They'll destroy you anyway. At least this way you go down fighting. Coulter stared at the contract, hands shaking. Then he nodded. All right, I'll do it. The testimony happened 2 weeks later. Coulter sat in front of a grand jury for 6 hours, answering every question, holding nothing back. He detailed how Sentinel had approached him, how they'd sold him on their services, how he'd ignored the warning signs until it was too late. When it was over, the grand jury returned indictments against 12 more officers, 4 consultants, and 2 city officials. Coulter resigned the next day. No press conference, no statement, just a quiet letter submitted to the mayor's office. Emily read about it in the newspaper, sitting in her apartment, packing the last of her things. She didn't feel victorious, didn't feel satisfied, just tired. But the case wasn't done. The federal prosecutors needed more. Coulter's testimony had opened doors, but it hadn't closed them. There were still gaps in the timeline, still transactions they couldn't trace, still people whose roles remained unclear. Emily got a call from Finch 3 days after Coulter resigned. We need you to go through the financial records again, Finch said. There's a pattern we're missing, something connecting the payments to specific incidents. Emily drove to Denver that afternoon, spent the next 12 hours in a conference room with Finch and 2 forensic accountants, cross-referencing dates, amounts, and complaint logs. What they found was worse than anyone expected. Every time Sentinel Advisory received a payment from a police department, complaints against officers in that department dropped. Not gradually, immediately, like someone had flipped a switch. They weren't just burying complaints, one of the accountants said. They were timing it, making sure the drops coincided with the payments, so it looked like the departments were improving. Performance metrics, Emily said quietly. They were gaming the system to justify the contracts. Finch nodded, which means every department that hired them knew exactly what they were paying for. Emily pulled up the list of departments. 17 in total, some small, some large. All of them with chiefs who'd signed off on the contracts. We need to bring them all in, Finch said. That's going to cause chaos. It's already chaos. We're just making it official. Quote, the arrests started the following week. Chiefs, captains, city managers. All of them taken into custody, charged with conspiracy, fraud, and civil rights violations. The media coverage was relentless. National outlets camped outside courthouses. Activists organized rallies in every town connected to Sentinel. Politicians demanded oversight. Reform bills were drafted overnight. And Emily's name was everywhere. She tried to avoid it, stopped reading the news, stopped checking social media, stopped answering calls from reporters who somehow got her number. But it didn't matter. The story had taken on a life of its own. Dad. One night she was walking out of the hospital after her shift when a woman approached her in the parking lot. Emily Harper? The woman said. Emily stopped, hand instinctively moving to her keys. Yeah? The woman held up a badge. Detective Iris Valdez, Internal Affairs, Denver PD. Can we talk? Emily's jaw tightened. About what? About a complaint we received. Against you. Emily's pulse stayed steady. From who? I can't say. But the allegation is that you conducted an unauthorized investigation, interfered with law enforcement operations, and coerced witnesses into providing false testimony. Emily stared at her. That's bullshit. Maybe, but I still have to investigate. Who filed it? Valdez hesitated. The complaint came through an attorney representing several of the officers currently facing charges. Vincent Cross. Valdez didn't confirm or deny, just handed Emily a business card. You'll need to come in for an interview. Bring a lawyer. Emily took the card, didn't look at it. When? Soon. I'll be in touch. Valdez walked away, leaving Emily standing in the parking lot, the weight of it settling over her like a blanket. They were coming for her now. Not just threats, not just intimidation, actual legal action designed to discredit everything she'd done. She got in her car, drove home, and called Finch. They filed a complaint against me, Emily said when Finch answered. I heard. Denver IA called us this morning. What do I do? You get a lawyer, a good one, and you don't talk to anyone without them present. Will this hurt the case? Finch was quiet for a moment. It could. If they can paint you as a rogue actor, it undermines the credibility of the investigation. So they win. Not if we don't let them. Ante. The lawyer Finch recommended was a woman named Patricia Huang, a former federal prosecutor who specialized in whistleblower cases. She met Emily at a coffee shop the next morning, listened to the entire story without interrupting, then leaned back and smiled. They're scared, Huang said. Of what? Of you. Of what you represent. You're a civilian who exposed a system they spent years building, and now they're trying to discredit you before the trial starts. Can they? They can try. But here's the thing, you didn't do anything illegal. You documented complaints. You talked to witnesses. You shared information with law enforcement. None of that violates any statute. So why file the complaint? Because it creates doubt, makes you look like someone with an agenda. And if they can convince a jury that you manipulated the evidence, the whole case falls apart. Emily's hands tightened around her coffee cup. What do? We fight back. We go into that interview, we answer every question truthfully, and we make it clear that you acted in good faith every step of the way. And if they don't believe me? Huang's smile didn't waver. Then we take it to court, and we win. The interview with Internal Affairs happened a week later. Emily sat across from Detective Valdez in a sterile conference room, Patricia Huang beside her, a recorder running on the table between them. Valdez asked questions for 3 hours. about the investigation, about her methods, about the witnesses she'd interviewed. Emily answered every question calmly, precisely, without embellishment. "Did you ever threaten anyone to get them to talk?" Valdez asked. "No." "Did you ever offer anything in exchange for testimony?" "No." "Did you ever misrepresent yourself as law enforcement?" "No." "Then why did people talk to you?" Emily met Valdez's eyes. "Because I listened, because I believed them, and because no one else would." Valdez made a note, then looked up. "Did you have any personal vendetta against the officers involved?" "No." "But you were stopped by Deputy Kellerman. That must have made you angry." "It made me aware. There's a difference." "Aware of what?" "That the system wasn't working, and that someone needed to fix it." Valdez closed her notebook. "That's all for now. We'll be in touch." Emily and Huang left the building, stepped into the cold afternoon air. "How do you think it went?" Emily asked. Huang shrugged. "Hard to say. Valdez is good at hiding what she's thinking. But you did well. You didn't give them anything they can use against you. So now we wait." "Now we wait." The decision came 2 weeks later. No charges, no disciplinary action. The complaint was dismissed as unfounded. Finch called Emily the moment the news broke. "You're clear." Emily closed her eyes, exhaled slowly. "Good." Better than good, it means they can't touch you, and it means the case moves forward. "When's the trial?" 6 weeks, and Harper, you're going to be the star witness. The trial started in March. Aaron Stratton, Vincent Cross, Gerald Peck, and 17 others faced federal charges in a courtroom packed with reporters, activists, and victims. Emily was called to testify on the 4th day. She wore the same clothes she'd worn to Kellerman's trial: simple blouse, slacks, no jewelry. Walked to the witness stand, swore to tell the truth, and sat down. The prosecutor was the same woman who'd handled Kellerman's case, Diana Ortiz, sharp and relentless. "Ms. Harper," Ortiz began, "can you tell the court how this investigation began?" Emily did, starting with the parking lot, the stop, the video, the complaints that followed. She spoke for 40 minutes, detailing everything she'd found, everyone she'd talked to, every connection she'd uncovered. When she finished, Ortiz nodded. "And at any point during this investigation, did you receive threats?" "Yes." "From who?" "I don't know. The messages were anonymous." "But you continued anyway." "Yes." "Why?" Emily looked at the jury. "Because if I didn't, no one else would." The courtroom was silent. The defense attorney, a different lawyer this time, since Cross was also a defendant, stood up. "Ms. Harper," he said, voice smooth, "isn't it true that you inserted yourself into this investigation without any legal authority?" "I documented what I saw." "That's not illegal." "But you weren't trained as an investigator. You're a nurse." "I was trained as a combat medic. I know how to assess situations, gather evidence, and report findings. That's exactly what I did." "But you also worked with law enforcement, shared information, coordinated actions. Doesn't that make you an agent of the state?" Emily's eyes narrowed. "I'm a civilian. I cooperated with an investigation. That's my right." The lawyer tried again. "Isn't it possible that you misinterpreted what you saw? That you saw patterns where there were none?" "No." "How can you be sure?" "Because I cross-referenced every incident with official records. Because I interviewed witnesses independently. Because I verified everything before I reported it." She paused. "I didn't misinterpret anything. I documented the truth." The lawyer had no response. The jury deliberated for 3 days. When the verdict came back, it was unanimous. Guilty. On all counts. Aaron Stratton, 22 years in federal prison. Vincent Cross, 18 years. Gerald Peck, 15 years. The others received sentences ranging from 5 to 12 years. The judge's voice was cold as she read the sentences. These defendants abused positions of trust, exploited the vulnerable, and corrupted the institutions meant to protect the public. Their actions were deliberate, systematic, and unforgivable. This court will ensure they are held accountable. Tershritis Sarapois. The gavel fell. Emily sat in the back row, hands folded in her lap, face calm. It was over. The reforms came quickly after that. Federal oversight for every department connected to Sentinel Advisory. Mandatory body cam enforcement, civilian review boards with real authority, whistleblower protection strengthened, and a new law drafted in Congress aimed at preventing networks like Sentinel from ever forming again. They called it the Harper Act. Emily hated the name, refused to attend the signing ceremony, refused interviews, refused awards, refused every attempt to turn her into a symbol. She just wanted to go back to work. 6 months later, she was hired at a hospital in Boulder. Night shift. ER. Same work she'd always done. No one recognized her. Or if they did, they didn't say anything. She preferred it that way. One night, 3 months into the job, she was treating a patient, middle-aged man, broken arm, came in after a car accident, routine case. As she was setting the splint, he looked at her. "You're her, aren't you?" Emily didn't look up. "I'm who?" "The nurse, from Silver Ridge. The one who—" "I'm just a nurse," Emily said, cutting him off. "That's all." The man was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. "Thank you." Emily finished the splint, stepped back. For what? For not letting them get away with it. She didn't respond, just moved on to the next patient. A year after the trial, Emily got a letter. No return address. Postmarked from a federal prison in Arizona. She opened it. The handwriting was neat, controlled. "Ms. Harper, you think you won. You think justice was served, but you didn't stop anything. You just delayed it. People like me, we've been doing this for decades, and we'll keep doing it long after you're gone. You took down one network, but there are others, and they're smarter than we were. They'll learn from our mistakes. They'll adapt. You can't save everyone, and eventually you'll realize that trying was the biggest mistake you ever made." Stratton. Emily read the letter twice. Then she folded it, put it in a drawer with all the other threats she'd received, and went to work. But the letter stayed with her. Not because it scared her, but because she knew it was true. Stratton was right. There would be others, other networks, other systems designed to protect the powerful and punish the vulnerable, and she couldn't stop all of them, but she could stop the ones she found. 3 weeks later, Emily got a call from a number she didn't recognize. She answered. "Yeah?" "Miss Harper." The voice was young, female, shaking. "My name is Jessica Morales. I'm a teacher in Lakewood, and I think something's happening here. Something like what you found in Silver Ridge." Emily closed her eyes, exhaled slowly. "Tell me everything," she said. Jessica started talking about stops that didn't make sense, about tickets issued without cause, about complaints that disappeared, about a department that seemed immune to scrutiny. Emily listened, taking mental notes, already mapping the investigation in her head. "Have you filed an official complaint?" Emily asked. "I tried. Nothing happened." "Do you have documentation? Dates? Names?" "Some. Not much." "That's okay. We'll start there." Jessica's voice cracked. "You'll help me?" "Yeah," Emily said. "I'll help." She hung up, stared at her phone for a long moment. Then she pulled out her laptop, opened a new file, and typed a single word at the top. Lakewood. And somewhere, in a prison cell in Arizona, Aaron Stratton smiled. Because he knew something Emily didn't. The network she'd destroyed in Colorado? It wasn't the only one. It wasn't even the biggest. Emily stared at the name on her screen, Lakewood, and felt the familiar weight settle in. Not dread, not exhaustion, just the quiet recognition that this was who she was now. The person people called when the system failed them. She didn't want it, but she'd stopped pretending she could walk away. The apartment was silent except for the hum of her laptop. Outside, Silver Ridge was winding down for the night. Streetlights flickering on, traffic thinning, the kind of quiet that used to feel like peace before she knew better. She opened a new document, typed Lakewood Investigation at the top, and started organizing what little information she had. Jessica Morales. Traffic stops. Fabricated evidence. The same pattern she'd seen before, just wearing a different uniform. Her phone buzzed. A text from Merrick. Heard you're looking into Lakewood. Want company? Emily typed back. Not yet. Still gathering. You always say that. Then you end up in over your head. I know what I'm doing. That's what worries me. She set the phone aside and kept working. The clock on her wall read 11:30. She'd been up for 19 hours. Her eyes burned. Her back ached from sitting in the same position too long. But stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering Stratton's letter, his smile in the courtroom, his promise that this would never end. Maybe he was right. Maybe it wouldn't. But that didn't change what she had to do. The meeting with Jessica Morales happened 2 days later in a coffee shop on the outskirts of Lakewood. Jessica was younger than Emily expected. Mid-20s, nervous energy, eyes that kept darting to the door like she expected someone to burst in. Thank you for coming, Jessica said, hands wrapped around a cup she hadn't touched. Emily sat down across from her. Tell me what's happening. Jessica pulled out her phone, scrolled through photos. Traffic stops, tickets, dates and times scribbled in notes. It started 6 months ago. I got pulled over for a broken taillight, except my taillight wasn't broken. The officer, his name's Ryan Delaney, he wrote me a ticket anyway, $200. Did you contest it? I tried, but the court date kept getting postponed, and when I finally got in front of a judge, Delaney showed up with photos. Photos I'd never seen before, showing a broken light that I know wasn't broken when I got pulled over. Emily's jaw tightened. Fabricated evidence. That's what I thought, so I started asking around. Turns out, I'm not the only one. At least a dozen people in my neighborhood have the same story. Different officers. Same pattern. Emily took the phone, scrolled through the documentation. It was thorough. Names, badge numbers, locations, amounts. Jessica had done the work. You're a teacher, Emily said. How'd you know to collect all this? Jessica's smile was bitter. Because I read about you. About what you did in Silver Ridge. I figured if you could take down a whole network, maybe I could at least prove I'm not crazy. Emily handed the phone back. You're not crazy, and this is bigger than a few bad tickets. How do you know? Because I've seen this before. It's not about the money from individual tickets. It's about volume, about quotas, about departments funding themselves through enforcement instead of taxes. She paused. Who's the chief in Lakewood? Martin Reyes, been there 8 years. Emily pulled out her laptop, started searching. Martin Reyes had a clean record. No complaints, no controversies, just steady advancement through the ranks. But his department had one of the highest citation rates in the state. She cross-referenced budget reports. Lakewood's general fund had decreased by 12% over the past 3 years, while citation revenue had increased by 47%. The numbers told the story. What about the mayor? Emily asked. Sandra Vega, former city council, one on a platform of fiscal responsibility and public safety. Emily cross-referenced the names. No obvious connections to Sentinel Advisory, no ties to Stratton or Cross or any of the people she'd already taken down, but the pattern was there. She could feel it. I need to talk to the other victims, Emily said. Can you put me in touch? Jessica nodded. I've got a group chat. People who've been comparing notes. I can introduce you. Do it. But don't tell them who I am. Not yet. Why not? Because if this is what I think it is, the people running it already know I'm looking, and I don't want to scare off witnesses before I've even started. Jessica's hands tightened around her cup. You think they're watching you? They're always watching. The question is whether they're scared enough to do something about it. The group met in a church basement the following Thursday. 15 people, all ages, all backgrounds, united by one thing. They'd all been targeted by Lakewood PD. Emily sat in the back, listened as they shared stories. Some had been pulled over for minor violations that turned into major fines. Others had been arrested for resisting when they asked questions. One man had lost his job because a warrant from an unpaid ticket showed up on a background check. A woman described being stopped 3 times in 1 month, always at night, always by the same officer who asked increasingly personal questions. The details varied, but the structure was always the same. Stop. Citation. Court date postponed. Fines doubled. Warrants issued. No one ever won. After an hour, Jessica stood up. There's someone here I want you to meet. She's helped other towns deal with this kind of thing. Emily walked to the front of the room, and a murmur rippled through the group as people recognized her. You're the nurse, someone said. From the news. Emily nodded. I am, and I'm here because what's happening to you shouldn't be happening to anyone. A woman in the front row raised her hand. Can you stop it? I can try, but I need your help. I need statements, documentation, anything you've got that proves this is a pattern and not just isolated incidents. We've tried that, the woman said. Nothing changes. That's because you tried it alone. This time, you're not alone. A man near the back stood up, arms crossed. His name was David, she'd learned later, a mechanic who'd been stopped 7 times in 2 years. Why should we trust you? You don't live here. You don't know what it's like when they come after you. Emily met his eyes. You're right. I don't live here, but I know exactly what it's like when they come after you. I've had threats. I've had people follow me. I've had lawyers try to destroy my credibility in court. I've had officers show up outside my apartment trying to intimidate me into silence. And I'm still here. So are you. Which means we've both got something they don't. What's that? Nothing left to lose. The room went quiet. Then David nodded slowly and sat back down. Another woman spoke up. What happens if we help you and it doesn't work? What happens when they come after us harder? Emily didn't sugarcoat it. That's a real risk. I can't promise this won't get worse before it gets better, but I can promise that if we document everything, if we build a case strong enough that they can't ignore it, then at least we'll have tried. And trying is better than accepting that this is just how things are. One by one, people started nodding, started pulling out phones, started sharing stories they'd kept quiet for months or years. Emily took notes, names, dates, patterns. By the end of the night, she had statements from all 15 people and contact information for 20 more. Over the next 3 weeks, Emily built the case the same way she'd built the others. Interviews, cross-references, financial records pulled from public databases. She worked 16-hour days surviving on coffee and the kind of stubborn momentum that had gotten her through deployments, and she found what she was looking for. Lakewood PD had a contract with a consulting firm called Veritas Group. The contract, signed 2 years ago, promised to optimize revenue streams through enhanced enforcement protocols. Emily ran the company name through every database she had access to. Veritas Group was registered in Nevada. The ownership structure was buried under 3 layers of shell companies. She started peeling them back. The first shell led to a holding company in Delaware. The second led to a trust in Wyoming. The third led to a name she recognized, Marcus Webb, the same shell identity that had been used to funnel money from Sentinel Advisory. Emily sat back, staring at the screen, her coffee forgotten and cold. They hadn't stopped. They'd just rebranded. She grabbed her phone and called Finch. I found another one, Emily said when Finch answered. Finch sighed, but it wasn't frustration. It was the sound of someone who'd been expecting this call. Where? Lakewood. Same setup, different name, same people behind it. You sure? I'm sure. They're using the same financial structures, same shell companies. It's Sentinel all over again, just with a new logo. Finch was quiet for a moment. Send me what you've got. I'll take it to the federal prosecutor. Emily hesitated. What if it's not enough? What if they say we're reaching? Then we keep digging until it is enough. But Harper, you can't do this alone anymore. You're burning yourself out. I'm fine. No, you're not. I see it every time we talk. You're running on fumes, and I'm not letting you collapse because you refuse to ask for help. Emily didn't respond right away. She looked around her apartment, the same sparse setup she'd had in Silver Ridge, no personal touches, just temporary furniture and the laptop that had become her entire life. I'll send you the files, she said quietly. Good. And Harper, get some sleep. You sound like hell. She hung up and stared at her laptop for a long moment. Then she sent the files, closed the computer, and tried to sleep. But sleep didn't come. It never really did anymore. Gad. The subpoenas went out a week later. Bank records, contracts, personnel files. Everything connected to Veritas Group and Lakewood PD. The response was immediate and hostile. Chief Reyes held a press conference at noon, standing behind a podium with the Lakewood PD seal, flanked by uniformed officers. This investigation is nothing more than a politically motivated attack on law enforcement, he said, voice steady and rehearsed. Emily Harper has made a career out of targeting police departments, and now she's coming after ours. We will not be intimidated. We will fight this every step of the way. Mayor Vega backed him up, threatening to sue the federal government for harassment and overreach. The media picked it up immediately. Cable news ran segments. Talking heads debated whether Emily Harper was a hero or a vigilante with an agenda. Opinion pieces filled newspapers arguing both sides. Some praised her persistence and courage. Others accused her of having a personal vendetta against law enforcement, of being anti-police, of causing more harm than good. Emily ignored all of it. She was too busy analyzing the data that came back from the subpoenas, and what she found made her blood run cold. Veritas Group wasn't just working with Lakewood. It had contracts with 11 other cities across 4 states: Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. And every single one of them showed the same pattern. Citation rates spiked immediately after the contracts were signed, complaints against officers mysteriously dropped, and municipal revenue from fines and fees soared. This wasn't a network. It was a franchise. Emily printed out the financial records, spread them across her kitchen table, and started mapping the connections with colored markers and string like she was building a murder board. Veritas Group paid consulting fees to 3 different firms. Those firms paid salaries to former officers, former consultants, and people with connections to departments across the region. And at the center of it all, pulling the strings through a maze of LLCs and trusts, was a name she'd never seen before: Victor Salinas. She ran his background. Former consultant for Sentinel Advisory. Left the company 6 months before it collapsed, right before the first arrests. No criminal record, no public presence, no social media footprint, just a ghost moving money and building the same system Stratton had built. He'd learned from Stratton's mistakes, kept things smaller, more distributed, harder to trace, but he'd made one critical error. He'd used the same playbook. Emily grabbed her phone and called an emergency meeting. Finch Vinson and the federal prosecutor, a man named Kenneth Briggs, met her at a conference room in Denver the next morning. Emily arrived with 3 folders of documentation, her laptop, and the kind of exhausted determination that made Finch wince when she saw her. "When's the last time you slept?" Finch asked. "I sleep." "That's not what I asked." Emily ignored her and opened her laptop. "We need to talk about Veritas Group." She laid it all out: the contracts, the cities, the money, the connections to Sentinel, the name Victor Salinas and his history with Stratton's organization. When she finished, Briggs leaned back in his chair and let out a low whistle. "This is RICO on steroids." Vinson nodded, flipping through the documents. "We're talking about a coordinated criminal enterprise operating in multiple jurisdictions. If we can prove it, really prove it, we can dismantle the whole thing." "And if we can't?" Emily asked. Briggs met her eyes. His were sharp, calculating, the eyes of someone who'd spent 20 years in courtrooms. "Then they regroup, rebrand, and start over somewhere else, which is why we have to get this right the first time. No shortcuts, no weak links. We build this case brick by brick until it's so solid they can't even chip it." "What do you need from me?" "Everything you've got. And I mean everything. Documents, witnesses, financial trails, communications. We're going to build a case so airtight they can't wriggle out of it, even with the best lawyers money can buy." Emily pulled a flash drive from her bag, slid it across the table. "It's all here, organized by city, cross-referenced by date and transaction." Briggs took it, turned it over in his hand, studied her face. "You know, most civilians would have stopped after the first case. Maybe pushed through a second if they were really committed. But you just keep going, because they keep doing it." "Fair point." He pocketed the drive. "All right, we'll start pulling warrants. Federal task force, multi-jurisdictional operation. But Harper, this is going to get ugly. These people know you're coming now. They're going to fight back hard. Let them. Briggs smiled faintly. You've got steel in you. I'll give you that. The investigation moved fast. Federal agents descended on Lakewood, Aurora, Scottsdale, and 6 other cities connected to Veritas Group. Offices were raided at dawn, computers seized, officers pulled into interrogation rooms, and within 48 hours, the network started to crack. One officer in Lakewood, a rookie named Danny Torres, 24 years old, barely 2 years on the force, broke first. He walked into the federal building in Denver with a lawyer and a thumb drive containing 2 years of internal communications. Emily sat in the observation room, watching through one-way glass as Torres laid it all out. The emails were damning. Orders from supervisors to increase stops, monthly quotas tied to performance bonuses, instructions on how to fabricate probable cause without triggering body cam reviews, screenshots of group chats where officers joked about revenue farming and milking the locals and celebrated hitting their numbers. And at the center of it all, coordinating the strategy, sending directives, arranging payments, was Victor Salinas. Briggs looked at Emily through the glass. We got him. Emily didn't smile. Not until he's in cuffs. We'll have him by end of week. Make it sooner. The arrest happened 3 days later. Victor Salinas was taken into custody at his home in Scottsdale, Arizona. Federal agents found him in his home office, frantically shredding documents. They seized his computers, his phones, and boxes of financial records he hadn't had time to destroy. Chief Martin Reyes was arrested at Lakewood PD headquarters, led out in handcuffs in front of his entire department. Officers stood in silence, some shocked, some relieved, some angry. Mayor Sandra Vega was cuffed in her office at City Hall, escorted past city employees who whispered and stared. By the end of the week, 23 people had been charged. Officers, administrators, consultants, city officials, all of them part of the same machine. The media coverage was relentless, but this time it was different. This time, people weren't debating whether Emily Harper was right or wrong. They were asking how something like this had been allowed to happen in the first place, how a system could be so broken that it took a civilian nurse to expose it. How many other towns were operating the same way? Congressional hearings were scheduled. State legislatures drafted reform bills. Police unions issued statements distancing themselves from the officers involved, calling them bad apples while ignoring the orchard that grew them. And Emily watched it all from the same place she always did. Her apartment, alone, coffee going cold on the desk beside her. Her phone rang. Vincent. You need to see this, Vince, Vincent said. See what? Check your email. I just sent you something. Emily opened her laptop, pulled up her inbox. The email contained a single attachment, a document labeled Veritas Internal Communications 2019 to 2025. She opened it. It was a memo, dated 3 months after Sentinel Advisory collapsed. Subject line, Lessons Learned and Path Forward. The memo outlined exactly how Sentinel had failed. Too visible, too centralized, too many connections to Stratton that made the whole operation vulnerable, too much reliance on family networks that created obvious conflicts of interest. And then it detailed how Veritas would succeed where Sentinel had failed. Smaller footprint, diversified ownership, geographic distribution to avoid pattern recognition, rotating consultants to prevent any single person from becoming a liability. At the bottom, a signature, Victor Salinas. And below that, a single line that made Emily's stomach turn. Special thanks to A. Stratton for consultation during transition period. Emily stared at the screen, hands shaking. Stratton had helped build this. Even from prison, even while serving a 22-year sentence, he'd been pulling strings, advising, consulting, making sure the system survived. She called Vincent back. We need to add Stratton to the indictment. On what grounds? He's already serving 22 years. Well, on the grounds that he conspired to create a new criminal enterprise while incarcerated. That memo is proof. He was actively involved in rebuilding what we tore down. Vincent was quiet. I'll talk to Briggs, but Harper, this is going to complicate things. His lawyers will argue he was just answering questions, that consultation isn't a crime. Then we prove it was more than consultation. We prove he was an active participant. How? I don't know yet, but I'll find it. Emily spent the next week digging through every communication seized from Salinas' office. Thousands of emails, hundreds of phone records, financial transactions spanning 2 years. And buried in a folder marked Archived Projects, she found it. A recorded phone call. Salinas to a prison line. Dated 8 months after Sentinel collapsed. She played it. Salinas' voice. The Arizona contracts are locked in. We're using the same revenue model, just distributed across smaller municipalities. Stratton's voice, unmistakable even through the prison phone static. Good. But don't centralize the consulting fees. That's what killed us last time. Route everything through separate entities. Make it look like independent contractors. Already done. What about enforcement protocols? Same as before. Traffic stops, fabricated violations, postponed court dates. Keep the fines doubling. Keep the warrants active. The system works as long as you maintain volume. And if someone complains? Stratton laughed. Then you bury it. That's what the supervisors are for. Emily listened to the entire recording 3 times. Then she sent it to Briggs with a single message. Add him to the indictment. The trial for the Veritas defendants started in September, nearly a year after the first arrests. Victor Salinas, Martin Reyes, Sandra Vega, and 20 others faced federal charges in a packed courtroom in Denver. And in a separate but related proceeding, Aaron Stratton was brought back from federal prison to face new charges: conspiracy to operate a criminal enterprise from incarceration, wire fraud, and obstruction of justice. Emily testified on the second day of the main trial, walking through the entire investigation, from Jessica Morales' first phone call to the financial records that proved Veritas Group's guilt to the phone recording that tied it all back to Stratton. The defense attorney for Salinas was expensive, polished, the kind of lawyer who charged $1,000 an hour. He tried to discredit her testimony, calling her a crusader with a personal vendetta against law enforcement. "Ms. Harper," he said, pacing in front of the jury box, "isn't it true that you've made a career out of attacking police departments?" "No, I've made a career out of being a nurse. Exposing corruption is something I do because someone has to. But you've targeted multiple departments across multiple states. Doesn't that suggest a pattern of bias on your part?" Emily's voice stayed level. "It suggests a pattern of corruption across multiple states. I didn't create that pattern. I just documented it." "You've become quite famous for this work, haven't you? Book deals, speaking engagements, a law named after you?" "I haven't written a book. I don't do speaking engagements unless forced. And I didn't ask for a law to be named after me." "But you've benefited from all this attention." Emily leaned forward slightly. "You want to know what I've benefited? I've been threatened, followed, harassed. I've had people try to destroy my career and my credibility. I've lost sleep, lost privacy, lost any chance at a normal life. So no, counselor, I haven't benefited. But the people who are being victimized by your client, they have. And that's what matters." The courtroom went silent. The defense attorney tried a different angle. "Isn't it possible that you've misinterpreted the evidence? That you've seen patterns where there are none because you're looking for them?" "No." "How can you be so certain?" "Because I cross-referenced every incident with official records. Because I interviewed witnesses independently and compared their stories. Because I verified every financial transaction with bank records and corporate filings. Because I didn't rely on assumptions or theories, I documented facts." She paused. "I was trained as a combat medic. We don't guess, we assess, we document, we report. That's exactly what I did here." The lawyer had no response. When Emily stepped down from the witness stand 2 hours later, she walked out of the courtroom without looking back at any of the defendants, but she felt Salinas watching her, felt the weight of his stare. She didn't care. Stratton's hearing happened in a different courtroom 3 weeks later. He was brought in wearing a prison jumpsuit, shackles on his wrists and ankles, looking older and grayer than Emily remembered. The confidence he'd had at his first trial was gone, replaced by something harder, meaner. He saw her sitting in the gallery and smiled, not warm, not friendly, just acknowledgement. Emily didn't react. The prosecutor presented the evidence, the memo, the phone recording, the proof that Stratton had advised Salinas on how to rebuild what Sentinel had been. Stratton's lawyer, A different attorney this time, since Cross was also in prison, argued that consulting wasn't a crime, that his client had simply answered questions from someone who'd worked for him previously, that there was no proof he'd actively participated in Veritas's operations or directed any criminal activity. The judge wasn't buying it. Judge Patricia Moreno, mid-60s, appointed by 3 presidents ago, had a reputation for no-nonsense rulings. She'd presided over organized crime cases, public corruption trials, and wasn't impressed by legal gymnastics. "Mr. Stratton," she said, voice cutting through the courtroom, "you are already serving a substantial sentence for your role in the Sentinel Advisory conspiracy. The evidence before this court demonstrates that even from federal prison, you sought to perpetuate the same criminal conduct that put you there. You provided specific guidance on how to structure a criminal enterprise. You advised on enforcement tactics designed to generate illegal revenue. You did this knowing it would harm innocent people." She paused, letting it sink in. "You have shown no remorse, no accountability, no willingness to change or accept responsibility for the damage you've caused. You've treated your incarceration as a minor inconvenience rather than a consequence of your actions." Stratton's jaw tightened. "I am adding 15 years to your existing sentence to be served consecutively. You will remain incarcerated for a total of 37 years. And I am recommending you be transferred to a maximum security facility with restricted communication privileges to prevent any further criminal activity from behind bars." The gavel fell. Stratton's smile vanished. The marshals moved to take him away. As he passed Emily's row, he stopped. The marshals tried to move him along, but he turned to look at her directly. "This doesn't end," he said quietly, just loud enough for her to hear. "You know that, right? There will always be another network, another system. You can't stop all of them. You'll burn yourself out trying." Emily met his eyes without flinching. "I don't have to stop all of them, just the ones I find. And I'm really good at finding them." Stratton was dragged away. Emily stood up and walked out of the courtroom into the hallway, where Finch and Briggs were waiting. 37 years, Finch said. "He'll die in prison." "Good," Emily said simply. Briggs nodded. "The Veritas jury is still deliberating, but with the evidence we have, I'd be shocked if they don't come back guilty on all counts." "How long?" "Could be days, could be a week." Emily pulled out her phone, checked her messages. 17 new emails, most of them from Sentinel Watch, case updates, witness interviews, requests for help from 3 new towns. The work never stopped. The Veritas jury deliberated for 4 days. When the verdict came back, Emily was in her office at Sentinel Watch, reviewing case files for a town in Oregon. Finch called her immediately. "Guilty," Finch said. "All counts, all defendants." Emily closed her eyes, exhaled slowly. "Sentences?" Salinas got 18 years, Reyes got 12, Vega got 8. The others ranged from 3 to 10 depending on their involvement. "When?" "Sentencing hearing is next week. You should be there." "I will." She hung up and sat in silence for a long moment, staring at the wall of her office where she'd posted a map of the United States. Red pins marked towns where Sentinel Watch had active cases. Blue pins marked towns where cases had been resolved. Yellow pins marked towns where investigations were ongoing. The map was covered in pins. The sentencing hearing was held on a Thursday morning in late October. The courtroom was packed with victims, reporters, activists, and family members of the defendants. Emily sat in the back row, watching as each defendant was brought forward to hear their fate. Victor Salinas stood before the judge, hands cuffed, expression blank. Judge Moreno, the same judge who'd sentenced Stratton, looked down at him from the bench. "Mr. Salinas," she said, "you took a criminal enterprise that had been exposed and dismantled, and you rebuilt it. You knew it was wrong. You knew it was illegal. You knew it harmed innocent people. And you did it anyway because it was profitable." She paused. "You preyed on vulnerable communities. You turned law enforcement into a revenue stream. You corrupted the institutions meant to protect the public. Your actions were deliberate, systematic, and caused immeasurable harm." Salinas said nothing. "This court sentences you to 18 years in federal prison. You will serve every day of that sentence. And when you're released, you will be permanently barred from working in any capacity related to law enforcement, consulting, or public safety. The gavel fell. One by one, the other defendants were sentenced. Reyes, Vega, the officers, the administrators, the consultants. When it was over, Emily walked out of the courtroom into the bright autumn sun. Finch caught up with her on the steps. "You did it again." "We did it. Don't be modest. This was you." Emily looked at her. It was a lot of people. Witnesses who came forward, investigators who did the work, prosecutors who built the case. "I just connected the dots." "You did more than that. You gave people hope that the system could actually work." Emily didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded and walked away. The reforms came quickly after that. Federal oversight for every department connected to Veritas. Mandatory body cam policies with automatic uploads to independent servers, civilian review boards with real subpoena power and authority to discipline officers. Whistleblower protections strengthened at the state and federal level. And a new federal law drafted in Congress with input from victims and advocates aimed at preventing consulting firms from profiting off enforcement quotas or revenue-driven policing. They called it the Harper Act. Emily hated the name, refused to attend the signing ceremony, refused interviews, refused awards, refused every attempt to turn her into a symbol or celebrity. She just wanted to work. 6 months after the Veritas trial concluded, Emily was offered a new position at the hospital in Boulder. Not as a bedside nurse, as the founding director of a new patient advocacy office designed to help people navigate complaints, medical errors, and institutional failures. It was different work, quieter, less dramatic, no courtrooms, no headlines, no federal investigations. But it mattered. She helped a patient get answers after a misdiagnosis nearly killed them, mediated a dispute between a family and a doctor over end-of-life care, created a reporting system that actually got complaints investigated instead of buried in bureaucracy. One day, a nurse stopped her in the hallway, a young woman, maybe 30, earnest and tired. "You're doing really good work here, you know," the nurse said. Emily shrugged. "Just trying to help." "No, you're doing more than that. You're changing how this place operates. People actually believe their complaints will be taken seriously now." Emily didn't know what to say, so she just nodded and kept walking. But the words stayed with her. A year after the Veritas trial, Emily got a call from a number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Ms. Harper?" The voice was female, older, shaking slightly. "My name is Denise Calloway. I'm a city council member in Greeley, Colorado, and I think we have a problem. I've been seeing the same patterns you documented in Silver Ridge and Lakewood. Traffic stops without cause. Fines that don't make sense. Complaints that go nowhere. Revenue spiking while community trust collapses. And I don't know what to do." Emily closed her eyes, exhaled slowly. Here we go again. But this time when Denise started talking, Emily didn't immediately take notes, didn't start mapping the investigation in her head. Instead, she said, "Have you contacted the state attorney general?" Denise paused, confused. "No, I thought I should call you first because of what you did and—" "Don't call me first," Emily interrupted, not unkindly. "Call them. Document everything you're seeing and file an official complaint with the state. If they don't act, then call me back. But start with the system. Give it a chance to work." "Will it?" "I don't know, but if it doesn't, then you'll have proof that you tried, and proof is what builds cases." Denise was quiet for a moment. "Can I ask you something?" "Yeah." "Do you ever get tired of this, of fighting these battles over and over?" Emily looked out the window of her office at the hospital parking lot, at the people coming and going, at the ordinary chaos of life continuing around her. "Every day," she said honestly. "But tired doesn't mean done. It just means you need to be smarter about how you fight." "How do you do that?" "You build systems, you train people, you create networks so that one person doesn't have to carry everything. You teach others how to document, how to fight back, how to demand accountability. Because sustainable change doesn't come from heroes. It comes from communities that refuse to accept corruption as normal." Denise was silent, absorbing that. "Call the AG," Emily said again. Do it properly. Go through channels, build your documentation, and if they ignore you, then we'll talk about next steps. Thank you, Ms. Harper. Just Emily. She hung up and went back to work. 2 years after Stratton's final sentencing, Emily was invited to speak at a national conference on police reform and accountability in Washington, D.C. Oh, she almost said no. Public speaking wasn't her thing. Being on display wasn't her thing. She'd turned down dozens of similar invitations. But Finch convinced her. People need to hear from you. Not because you're a hero, not because you're perfect, but because you're real. Because you're proof that one person who refuses to look away can actually make a difference. And right now, people need to believe that's possible. So she went. The conference was held in a massive hotel ballroom, packed wall to wall with activists, politicians, law enforcement officials, reformers, and victims of the kind of abuse Emily had spent years fighting. When her turn came, she walked to the podium in simple clothes. No suit, no makeup, just jeans and a blazer, and looked out at the sea of faces. She spoke without notes. "I'm not here to tell you I have all the answers," she began, voice steady but not loud. "Because I don't. I'm a nurse who got stopped in a parking lot 5 years ago and refused to let it go. That's it. That's the whole story. I'm not special. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who decided that enough was enough." She paused, letting the words settle. But here's what I learned along the way. The system doesn't fix itself. It doesn't wake up one day and decide to be better. It changes because people force it to change, because someone documents the pattern, because someone finds the courage to speak up even when they're terrified, because someone refuses to accept that this is just how things are. She gripped the edges of the podium. A lot of people ask me why I kept going, why I didn't stop after Silver Ridge or after Ridgefield or after any of the other cases. And the truth is, I don't know if I ever really had a choice. Because once you see something broken, you can't unsee it. Once you know people are being hurt, you can't unhear their voices. And once you realize you have the ability, even a small one, to do something about it, walking away stops being an option. The room was completely silent. 1,000 people. Not a sound. So if you're sitting here wondering what you can do, wondering if your voice matters, wondering if one person can actually change anything, stop wondering. Start acting. Document what you see. Talk to people who've been hurt. Build coalitions. Demand accountability from the people in power. Use every legal tool you have. And don't stop until things actually change. She stepped back slightly from the microphone. Because here's what they're counting on. They're counting on you to give up, to get tired, to get scared, to decide it's not worth the fight, to convince yourself that you're just one person, and what difference can one person really make? She looked directly at the audience, her voice stronger now. But you're not one person. You're connected to other people. Your voice adds to their voices. Your documentation strengthens their cases. Your courage inspires their courage. And together, not as heroes, but as ordinary people who refuse to be silent, you can change systems that were designed to be unchangeable. She paused one last time. I'm not going to tell you it's easy. It's not. I'm not going to tell you it won't cost you something. It will. But I will tell you this. The people who got hurt while everyone else looked away, they're worth it. The communities that lost faith in institutions meant to protect them, they're worth it. And the possibility, even just the possibility, of a system that actually works the way it's supposed to, that's worth it too. She stepped away from the podium. The applause started slowly, a few people, then more, then the entire room rising to its feet in a standing ovation that lasted 3 full minutes. Emily didn't smile, didn't wave, didn't bask in it. She just walked off the stage, out the side door, and into the hallway where Finch was waiting. That was incredible, Finch said, eyes bright. It was exhausting. You're allowed to be tired, you know. You've earned it. Emily leaned against the wall, suddenly feeling every hour of the past 5 years. I don't know how to stop. Then don't stop. Just do it differently. You've been fighting alone for too long. Build something. Create an organization. Train people to do what you do. Make it sustainable instead of burning yourself out one case at a time. Emily looked at her. You want me to start a nonprofit? I want you to multiply yourself, because the world needs 100 Emily Harpers, not just one exhausted woman trying to save everyone by herself. Emily was quiet for a long moment. "I'll think about it, Isha," she said finally. "Good. Now go get some food. You look like you haven't eaten in a week." Oh, it took 8 months to build. The organization was called Sentinel Watch, a deliberate reclamation of the name that had caused so much harm. It was a nonprofit dedicated to helping victims of police misconduct and institutional abuse document their cases, connect with legal resources, and navigate a system designed to silence them. Emily ran it from a small office in Boulder, funded by grants and donations, staffed almost entirely by volunteers, former victims who wanted to help others, retired officers who'd seen corruption and wanted to fight it, law students looking for real-world experience, community activists, and people who just wanted to make a difference. The first case Sentinel Watch took on was in a small town called Fairmont, population 6,000. A single mother named Maria Santos who'd been pulled over 17 times in 6 months, always by the same officer, always late at night, always without legitimate cause. Emily and her team, 3 volunteers and a law student intern, documented everything. They interviewed Maria, collected her citations, mapped the stops, cross-referenced them with the officer's shift schedule, and filed a detailed complaint with the state attorney general's office. Within 3 weeks, the officer was suspended pending investigation. Within 6 weeks, he was fired. Within 8 weeks, the entire Fairmont PD was under federal review. The case made local news, then state news, then national. And the calls started coming in. Not just from Colorado, from everywhere. Dozens of calls, then hundreds. People from towns across the country who'd been waiting, sometimes for years, for someone to believe them. Emily hired more staff, expanded the office, created training programs and documentation templates, built a network of volunteer attorneys willing to take cases pro bono. Within a year, Sentinel Watch had chapters in 12 states. Within 2 years, 23. And Emily stopped being the person who fought every battle herself. Instead, she became the person who taught others how to fight, who created the tools and systems and support networks that made resistance possible. She trained community organizers on how to document patterns of abuse, taught civilians how to file effective complaints, connected victims with legal resources and investigative journalists, built databases of precedents and successful cases. The work was different, less dramatic. No courtroom confrontations, no federal raids, but it worked. 5 years after the first traffic stop in the Silver Ridge parking lot, Emily stood in that same parking lot on a cold November morning. The police station looked different now. New leadership, new policies. Body cam footage automatically uploaded to public servers that couldn't be deleted or lost. Civilian oversight board with real authority, meeting monthly and publishing detailed reports. It wasn't perfect. Systems never were. But it was better. She walked inside, past the front desk where Tanya Reeves, now Captain Reeves, head of training and community relations, looked up and smiled. "Harper, didn't know you were coming by. Just passing through, thought I'd say hello." Reeves came around the desk. "You got time for coffee? There's a place down the street." "Yeah, that sounds good." They walked together through downtown Silver Ridge, past shops and cafes, past people who didn't recognize Emily or didn't care. At the coffee shop, they sat by the window. "How's Sentinel Watch?" Reeves asked. "Growing. We just opened a chapter in Montana, took on a case in Florida that looks like it might go federal. You ever think about slowing down?" Emily shrugged. "I've gotten better at delegating." Reeves laughed. "That's not the same thing. It's the best I can do." They talked for an hour, about work, about changes in Silver Ridge, about life. It felt normal, almost easy. When Emily left, driving back toward Boulder, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Not peace, exactly, not closure, but maybe something close to it. That night, Emily sat in her apartment, a real apartment now, not just temporary furniture and a laptop. She'd bought a couch, hung some pictures, made it feel like a place she actually lived instead of just a place she existed between cases. Her phone buzzed. A text from a number she didn't recognize. "Ms. Harper? My name is Marcus Reed. I'm a paramedic in Spokane, Washington. I think I found something you need to see. Patterns in arrest rates, financial irregularities, officers with complaint histories that disappeared. I don't know who else to call. Emily stared at the message for a long moment. 5 years ago, she would have immediately started building the case herself, would have driven to Spokane, interviewed witnesses, pulled records, worked 18-hour days until she had answers. Now, she had options. She typed back, "Have you contacted Sentinel Watch's Pacific Northwest chapter? They're based in Seattle and handle cases in Washington state. I'll send you their contact info." A pause. Then, "I was hoping to work with you directly." Emily understood. She'd been there. The fear that no one else would take it seriously. The need for someone who'd proven they could actually win. But she also knew she couldn't be everywhere, couldn't fight every battle personally. "The Seattle team is good," she typed. "I trained most of them myself. They'll take this seriously. But if you want, I can review your documentation and provide guidance to their investigation." Another pause. Then, "Okay, thank you." Emily sent him the contact information, then opened her laptop and emailed the Seattle chapter lead, a former public defender named Lisa Chen, who joined Sentinel Watch after winning 3 excessive force cases. "New case incoming from Spokane," Emily wrote. "Paramedic named Marcus Reed. Sounds promising. Let me know if you need support." The reply came back in minutes. "On it. Thanks for the heads up." Emily closed the laptop and looked around her apartment. 5 years. 3 major investigations. 1 organization with chapters in 23 states. Hundreds of cases resolved. Thousands of people helped. And she was still here. Still fighting, but differently now. Smarter. More sustainable. Building systems instead of burning herself out. Her phone rang. "Finch." "You see the news about the Greeley investigation?" Finch asked. "No. What happened?" "The AG actually acted. Launched a full investigation based on that city council member's complaint. Looks like they found enough evidence to bring charges against 3 officers and the police chief." Emily felt something loosen in her chest. "They didn't need me." "No, they followed the process you've been teaching, documented everything, filed properly, gave the system a chance to work. And it did." "That's good." "That's more than good, Harper. That's the whole point. You're not supposed to be the only person who can do this. You're supposed to make yourself obsolete." Emily smiled faintly. "Not sure I'm there yet." "Maybe not, but you're closer than you were." They talked for a few more minutes, then hung up. Emily walked to the window, looked out at Boulder, lights spreading across the valley, mountains dark against the sky. Somewhere out there, someone was being stopped who shouldn't be. Someone was filing a complaint that might get buried. Someone was wondering if speaking up would make things worse. But now they had options, resources, networks, people trained to help. They weren't alone anymore. And neither was Emily. She'd been a soldier once, trained for combat, deployed to war zones, learned to function under fire. Then she'd been a nurse, saving lives, patching wounds, working in systems that didn't always work. Now she was something else, something the corrupt systems hadn't accounted for. She was the consequence they'd ignored, the voice that refused to be silenced, the documentation they couldn't erase. But more than that, she was proof that ordinary people could fight back, that systems could change, that corruption could be exposed and accountability could be won. Not easily, not quickly, not without cost, but possible. Emily Harper had learned that truth in a parking lot 5 years ago, when a deputy with too much power and too little oversight had made the mistake of underestimating her. She'd been just a nurse carrying a lunch bag, and she'd brought down an empire. Not because she was special, not because she was a hero, but because when she saw something wrong, she refused to look away. And because she'd learned that the most powerful weapon against injustice wasn't violence or anger, it was documentation, evidence, patience, and the stubborn refusal to let them win. Emily turned away from the window, picked up her laptop one more time, and opened the Sentinel Watch database. 23 active cases, 47 in review, hundreds resolved. The work continued, it always would. But now, she wasn't carrying it alone. And that, more than any verdict, more than any sentence, more than any law bearing her name, was the real victory. The system had tried to silence her. Instead, she'd taught others to speak. And their voices, together, were changing everything.